Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 526 The Remnants of the Tsuneshiro Family. At this moment, Jinchokiko's hostility was almost unconcealed, as if he was declaring war on Senju Cheng and others on behalf of Kusuken. These words also made the faces of the other Kusuken members standing behind Jinchokiko change slightly. Some were excited, some frowned, or had no expression at all. Zuixu. Then, after Jinchokiko said, the blonde boy Zuixu, who understood, directly used his ability invaders must die to roll all the people within the range into his ability space. Everyone felt a flash in front of their eyes, and the surrounding environment was no longer the previous club environment, but it seemed to have come to a video game space. Jinchokiko looked around, with a smug smile on his face, and said, "This is the special space that Zuixu can open after obtaining part of the power of the Fullbring given by me. As for the way to leave, either you have to be strong enough to break through the space, or you can defeat us." Senju Cheng looked around and spoke with some interest. "So, this is why you specifically asked us to enter the apartment to prevent anyone from escaping before Yakio's ability covers everyone?" "Yes, after all, Mr. Kurosaki Cheng's speed is quite amazing." Jinchokiko responded, then turned his head and spoke to the Kusuken members behind him. "You have been given power, each of you should quickly deal with your opponents and prove your worth." Upon hearing this, Yakio manipulated the surrounding ability space to quickly reorganize and reconstruct like building blocks. In an instant, except for Senju Cheng who remained in the same place, the spaces of the others seemed to be split apart separately. Only Synopsis, Niamu and Inoue or Ian were close enough to each other that the three of them quickly huddled together and were not split apart. When the surrounding space returned to its original state, in front of Senju Cheng, only Jinchokiko, who exuded a ferocious aura, was left. Then, Jinchokiko shouldered the exaggerated and ferocious two-handed giant sword in his hand and spoke. "What do you think? If you submit to me now, your companions may still have a chance to survive." "Submit to you?" Senju Cheng finally couldn't help laughing at this and said, "Even if I am willing to do this, once it is really publicized, I'm afraid that your soul will have to reincarnate into Soul Society and start a new life in less than 3 days." Jinchokiko's face sank and said, "It seems that you're very confident, Kurosaki Cheng. Even Chatyasutra, who has just learned the Fullbring technique, is able to rescue you from the encirclement of the Gotti 13 with my ability. The strength of the other Kusuken members after being strengthened is not what you can imagine. Since Mr. Jinjo is so confident, it would be fine to give Ichigo and the others more opportunities to gain experience." After a pause, Senju Cheng seemed to look up and down at Jinchokiko and said, "And if my judgment is correct, you should have two kinds of Fullbring abilities. One should be similar to the two-handed giant sword combat state of zanpakutō, and the other ability is the plunder and grant of Fullbring." Jinchokiko's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. Because Senju Cheng's judgment is very accurate. However, he made such a clear judgment in just an instant, which is undoubtedly amazing. "So, I'm very curious." Senju Cheng's eyes moved, and he met Jinchokiko's eyes from a distance and said, "Where did you plunder so many Fullbring abilities from, and amplified a rat who was originally just afraid to show up in front of the Gotti 13 to this extent, and even shared some of the Fullbring abilities with others?" Rat. This sentence may be used by Jinchokiko and Tsutsuma Hyakuro to mock their own situation occasionally. However, just like when a beggar becomes a mover rich, what is often the most angry and disgusting is being looked at by others with the eyes of a beggar again. At this moment, Jinchokiko saw a kind of indifference and calmness in Senju Cheng's eyes. Jinchokiko hated this kind of eyes to the extreme. "I changed my mind." The next moment, Jinchokiko rushed towards Senju Cheng, and the whole person burst out with a terrifying spiritual pressure that was enough to amaze people. He raised a ferocious two-handed giant sword and chopped it down on Senju Cheng's head. "Die. I will carry your head and step into the jingling time." Bang. With one blow, the ground of the strange space formed by Akio's ability was directly cut open by a big hole. However, Senju Cheng's figure was erratic, but he still kept a distance of several meters from Jinchokiko, and continued to speak. "Then, can you allow me to guess?" Jinchokiko said, staring at Senju Cheng with a hint of anger in his eyes. "Your calm demeanor is really disgusting." It reminds me of that bastard-educated Joshiro. Almost as soon as Jinchokiko finished speaking, the ferocious giant sword was swung by Jinchokiko, and a large number of green slashes formed by spiritual pressure poured down crazily. Boom, 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 boom. Senju Makoto's body was erratic, and he kept retreating to avoid those slashes, and continued to speak. In fact, in more ancient times, humans with the potential for full bring often had an identity called the Stern-Crossed Knights, and were granted Queency abilities by the King of Queencies. However, 1,000 years ago, the King of Queencies was defeated by the Gotti 13, and the Stern-Crossed Knights, which gathered a large number of people with the potential for full bring, completely disappeared. Therefore, although there have been scattered full-bringers appearing all over the world over the past 1,000 years, due to their small numbers and their complete reliance on self-discovery, they have hardly attracted the attention of the Gotti 13. However, there is an exception. Makoto Senju dodged the hideous giant sword that was about to hit his nose and fell to the ground. Then he stepped on the hideous giant sword, leaned over slightly to look closely at Jinchokiko in front of him, and spoke. Only the Tsunoshiro family among the 4 great noble families has been researching and collecting full-bringers for thousands of years, even though that Tsunoshiro family was almost destroyed along with the noble street not long ago, Senju Makoto said, facing Jinchokiko's somewhat shocked eyes. So, could it be that the remnants of the Tsunoshiro family are assisting you in providing you with full-bring abilities for you to plunder? Chapter 527 The Book of the End. The tone of inquiry, but the look in Senju Makoto's eyes revealed a certainty. Under Senju Makoto's gaze, Jinchokiko, who looked unruly and violent, clearly flashed a trace of panic and disbelief. I don't know what you are talking about. Jinchokiko shouted angrily, and the spiritual pressure on his body burst out wildly, making the entire ability space seem to be washed away. He suddenly raised his foot and kicked Senju Makoto. Senju Makoto raised his knee to block. Boom. A huge wave of air exploded. Senju Makoto was blown away like a cannonball, while Jinchokiko followed behind with a ferocious giant sword. Cross-crescent. The next moment, Jinchokiko's ferocious giant sword swept horizontally and vertically, and a cross-spiritual pressure slash quickly swept over, as if to split Senju Makoto into 4 petals. However, as Senju Makoto stepped back, his retreat stopped abruptly. He still kept his hands in his windbreaker pockets, responding to the cross-crescent without dodging or avoiding. Then, the cross-crescent came and overlapped with Senju Makoto's figure. Did he do it? Jinchokiko murmured with a hint of hope in his eyes. Perhaps, at the beginning, Jinchokiko had absolute blind confidence in his current state. After plundering the power from the corpses of a large number of full-bring ability users, he thought that he was invincible in both the real world and the Soul Society. The king of full-bring. However, when Jinchokiko really fought with Senju Makoto, whether it was Senju Makoto's always calm and indifferent expression or his posture of constantly dodging his attacks with ease, Jinchokiko felt more and more terrified. You are too weak. Senju Makoto's calm voice came out from the smoke caused by the cross-crescent. As the smoke gradually dissipated, Senju Makoto, who still had his hands in his pockets and looked completely unscathed, commented. He only has a powerful spiritual pressure comparable to that of Captain General Yamamoto in his Shikai state, but he doesn't have the heart and faith to match it, and the power he exerts is only laughable. That calm demeanor, it almost made Jinchokiko feel a congestion in his brain. He only has spiritual pressure, but not enough heart and faith. If Senju Makoto's tone and attitude were arrogant and contemptuous enough, then Jinchokiko might just be pure anger. However, that look of simply commenting on something made Jinchokiko suddenly return to the past, when he was just an ant that was casually used as a chess piece by the Soul Society. The heart that clearly wanted to protect humanity and the city was so ridiculous in the eyes of the 13th Gotti Squad, and was just a toy, asshole. Jinchokiko's eyes seemed to gradually turn blood red, and the skeleton armor cover in his entire body became more and more hideous and terrifying, and he looked more and more like a hollow. The exaggerated spiritual pressure was still rising. What are you laughing at? Who do you think I am? Almost as soon as the voice fell, Jinchokiko's figure instantly disappeared from the spot and appeared above Senju Makoto, holding up a hideous giant sword and slashing down with materialized spiritual pressure. Boom. A huge roar erupted, and it was not only echoed in the area that Yukio had specially divided for Jinchokiko and Kurosaki Ichigo, but also in the other areas that were specially separated. What an exaggerated movement. In theory, each divided area is absolutely independent. Yukio, who looked like a European aristocratic boy, said with emotion. Ishidarai, who was standing in front of Yukio, pushed his glasses and spoke. Indeed, you're indeed a not insignificant figure to have been able to hold out for so long in front of the great man without being defeated. Yakiyo raised his eyes that seemed a little lazy and looked at Seireitei and said, "Even though you said so, I don't think anyone can defeat Jinjo in this state, and in order to avoid being blamed by Jinjo later, I can only get rid of you." On the contrary, Seireitei looked at the dwarf in front of him and said, "You are the one with the ability to maintain this space, right? So as long as you are eliminated, many problems will be solved. You can try." Almost as soon as Yakiyo finished speaking, a large number of monsters similar to those in video games suddenly appeared around. As the game is about to start, I can briefly explain the rules to you. The rules are quite simple. That is, this space will infinitely generate various monsters and continue to chase the opponent until the opponent is defeated. Then the game begins. As Yakiyo's voice fell, the monsters that were generated rushed towards Seireitei frantically. Video game. Seireitei had undoubtedly roughly judged Yakiyo's ability at this moment, which was to create a video game-like space that could be set at will. As long as he entered it, Seireitei was a player in a sense, and Yakiyo could set various game rules and settings, as well as create various environments and monsters at will. It's really a very troublesome ability. When Seireitei and Yakiyo began to fight, in another independent area, Kurosaki Ichigo and Tsutsuma Hyakuro also collided with everything. Kurosaki Ichigo's Bankai Tensei Zanjutsu and Tsutsuma Hyakuro's Samurai Sword formed by the Fullbring Book of the End collided with each other. After Tsutsuma Hyakuro was given a portion of the power of Fullbring by Jinjo, the spiritual pressure and speed displayed by Tsutsuma Hyakuro were almost as good as those of Kurosaki Ichigo. However, Kurosaki Ichigo relied on his swordsmanship and Getsuga Tensho to steadily suppress Tsutsuma Hyakuro. Boom. Just as Kurosaki Ichigo was slightly startled by the collision between Senju Cheng and Jinjo, a smile suddenly appeared on the corner of Tsutsuma Hyakuro's mouth, and his speed soared. The samurai sword named Book of the End slid past Tensei Zanjutsu and slashed towards Kurosaki Ichigo. However, Kurosaki Ichigo's fighting instinct was so strong that he instinctively blocked the attack that was aimed at the vital point, and it only lightly brushed Kurosaki Ichigo's shoulder. A trace of blood flowed out. Of course, for Ichigo Kurosaki, this level of injury was not enough to affect his combat power at all. When he was about to release the Getsuga Tensho on Tsutsuma Hyakuro and saw Tsutsuma Hyakuro's face clearly, Ichigo Kurosaki suddenly froze in place. Chapter 528. Zubai's substitute hostility disappeared instantly. Although Ichigo Kurosaki still had a vague idea that Tsutsuma Hyakuro was his enemy, the hostility disappeared completely for no apparent reason. He even looked at Tsutsuma Hyakuro as if he saw someone he valued very much. All kinds of memories related to Tsutsuma Hyakuro suddenly emerged in his mind. Something was changed. Ichigo Kurosaki froze in place. Why am I here? What am I fighting for? Uncle Kurosaki Makoto? Wait. Who is Kurosaki Makoto? Seeing this, Tsutsuma Hyakuro smiled and said, "It's a pity, Ichigo Kurosaki. My Fullbring ability, Book of the End, has the ability to insert the other person's past memories at will. Your past has been changed. I will become the person you admire and respect, and Kurosaki Makoto will be completely erased from your memory." As Tsutsuma Hyakuro told the story, Ichigo Kurosaki's memories of the past gradually became clearer. That was a past without Kurosaki Makoto. No, that's not right. Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes revealed a struggle. Tsutsuma Hyakuro continued to speak slowly. "Ichigo, have you forgotten? I'm the most important person to you, and Kurosaki Makoto is your enemy. Follow your memory and recognize who your real enemy is." However, while Tsutsuma Hyakuro was still speaking slowly, he did not notice that as Ichigo Kurosaki's thoughts continued to conflict with his memories, a mask gradually formed on Ichigo Kurosaki's face. "That's right, I'm the one you admire and respect the most." At this moment, before Tsutsuma Hyakuro could finish speaking, Ichigo Kurosaki's originally hanging arm suddenly grabbed Tsutsuma Hyakuro's neck, and a voice that sounded like a synthesized noise came from Ichigo Kurosaki's mouth. So noisy. What admiration and respect! The next moment, Tsutsuma Hyakuro felt dizzy, and his whole body became lighter, and then he was pinched by the neck and hit the ground heavily. Bang! After the blow, Tsutsuma Hyakuro felt a sharp pain in his internal organs, his neck was almost broken, and his brain was blank. However, before Tsutsuma Hyakuro could react, At this moment, Kuroseki Ichigo, whose body was controlled by Kyuubi, raised the heavenly locking Zanjutsu in his hand, and then waved it towards Tsutsuma Haikyuu, whose pupils suddenly shrank in front of him. Crescent Moon Sky Strike. Moreover, this was different from the Crescent Moon Sky Strike that Kuroseki Ichigo swung only one time. The Crescent Moon Sky Strike used by Kyuubi was almost like a waterfall, rushing towards Tsutsuma Haikyuu. Boom. A large area of the ground was directly hit, and even the outside world could be seen through the hole. As for Tsutsuma Haikyuu, half of his body had completely disappeared. Then, Kyuubi controlled Kuroseki Ichigo's body and stood up. Almost half of his face was covered by the hollow mask, and he spoke with madness and arrogance. How boring, Ichigo. You can't even deal with this kind of trash quickly. Admiration, respect, and so on are really disgusting. They will only make you weaker. I would say forget about Kuroseki Makoto and then kill him. However, before Kyobaku could finish, one of Kuroseki Ichigo's hands, as if it was not controlled by Kyobaku, suddenly lifted up and grabbed the half of the hollow mask on his face. Then, the palm suddenly exerted force and completely tore off the mask. In an instant, Kuroseki Ichigo's pupils returned to their normal appearance when they were controlled by Kyobaku. Too noisy, Kyobaku. Kuroseki Ichigo said as he looked at the half of the mask that was torn off and gradually dissipated in his hand. Don't forget, I'm the king, and you will just a mount. But, Kuroseki Ichigo paused for a moment, recalling Senju Makoto's teaching not long ago about getting along well with the hollow in his body, and then spoke. Thank you. It was for this reason that during this period of time, under the guidance of the Masked Corps, Ichigo Kuroseki tried to communicate and understand Kyobaku when he contacted Kyobaku in his inner space many times. Kyobaku was not as scary as Ichigo Kuroseki once feared. On the contrary, under Kyobaku's seemingly ruthless and violent surface, Ichigo Kuroseki had a faint feeling that he was a Tsundere. Tsundere. Suddenly, Ichigo Kuroseki remembered what Ishirai said about him not long ago, and Ichigo Kuroseki's face darkened. While Ichigo Kuroseki asked Shiodai Kyobaku to kill the careless Tsutsuma Hyakuro in one move, the battle between Chagtato and Shiseikai Ohara was in a white-hot stage. It is worthy of Chagtato's full-bring giant's right arm and devil's left arm, as well as Shiseikai Ohara's ability Gambling Fist, which are all extremely enhanced close combat abilities. Especially after Shiseikai full-bring ability was amplified, his entire physique seemed to have expanded, and each punch could amplify the damage several times with a high probability. It was precisely because of this that the melee between Chagtato and Shiseikai was cruel and passionate. Boom boom boom, punch after punch collided. Chagtato and Shiseikai were nailed to the ground, punching each other non-stop. The huge collision almost turned the space into ripples like the surface of water. As for Chagtato and Shiseikai tops, they had completely burst open, revealing their strong and sturdy bodies. Muscles were trembling, tendons and bones were wailing, blood and sweat were constantly splashing, scars continued to appear on both sides' bodies, but neither Chagtato nor Shiseikai had any intention of retreating, and their eyes were always firmly punching at each other. Gradually, Chagtato's state reappeared. Both sides of his body were stained with red lines on a white background and red lines on a black background, as if he had turned into a monster. As for Shiseikai Ohara, the brass knuckles that were originally the medium of full-bring seemed to have turned into a pair of gloves covering Shiseikai Ohara's hands. Behind Shiseikai Ohara, the multiply representing the amplified damage continued to emerge. That multiply was still rising. However, compared with Chagtato's ability that was almost an integrated offenser and defenser, Shiseikai Ohara's body, although strengthened by the amplification of full-bring, began to bleed from every inch of his skin. Limit. In a sense, Shiseikai Ohara's body was almost at the limit. However, the number behind Shiseikai Ohara was still soaring rapidly until it was fixed on 777. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 529. The Demon's Secret Attack. 777. This is the luckiest blow for Shiseikai full-bring Gambling Fist, and it also has the highest amplification. This is the luckiest blow. The winner is me. As Shiseikai shouted, the number 777 flashing behind him seemed to turn into an after-image and merge into Shiseigai's body. The power of 7, the will of 7, the luck of 7. Faintly, Shishigawa's burst of spiritual pressure turned into a lifelike lion roaring at Cheng-ge. That blow, then blasted out. Boom. At the moment of this blow, the air was filled with an extreme explosion, and it arrived in front of Cheng-ge in almost the blink of an eye. Cheng-ge's short curly hair was constantly blown by the strong wind, but his eyes were still calm and firm. In his mind, he recalled scenes related to Kurosaki Ichigo. In the past, we were bound by friendship and promise. I was powerless to stop Ishirai in the classroom. I watched Ishirai pinch Ichigo Kurosaki's neck and press him against the wall. We had agreed to punch each other, but why, when it was necessary, my fist was so weak that I couldn't protect Ichigo at all. Ichigo, who knows, is waiting for my help somewhere in this space. I will never lose. Cheng-ge's body was slightly bent, and the giant's right arm blocked in front of him. This time, not only did Cheng-ge's right forearm become a shield, but his arm and shoulder also had obvious deformation, and the whole thing seemed to have turned into a large shield blocking in front of him. Bang! Shishigawa's fist, which sounded like a roaring lion, hit the giant's right arm. At this moment, the collision point between the two sides seemed to emit a dazzling white light. The lion seemed to have collided with a giant and burst through its body, until it rushed to the end of this area and slowly dissipated. And Shizuhuan's fist collided with the shield transformed by the giant's right arm and sank deeply into it. The shield seemed to have deformed under this exaggerated impact. The corners of Cheng-ge's mouth began to ooze blood. Seeing this scene, Shizuhuan couldn't help but smile and said, "I've said it before, the victory is mine. I will never lose with my absolute loyalty to Master Tsukushima. Don't hold on, big guy. That was an absolutely lucky blow just now. Even if it didn't hit the head, it would be enough to kill anyone," Shizuhuan said as he casually grabbed the giant's right arm in front of him and slowly pulled it up. The giant's right arm did not send out any resistance, which was not unexpected by Shizuhuan. However, when Shishigawa pushed aside the giant's right arm in front of him, what appeared in front of Shishigawa was a devil's left arm with a clenched fist. It was a hideous and creepy arm with red stripes on a white background, which seemed to be filled with the power to destroy everything. The ultimate attack of the devil. As Cheng-ge gently uttered a calm sentence, it seemed that as Cheng-ge swung his fist, the outline of a skeleton demon was reflected behind him. The next moment, this punch hit Shishigawa's chest. The terrifying impact force made Shishigawa's entire brain seem to have turned into a blank at the first moment, and the numbers representing the full brain behind Shishigawa began to jump wildly. Then, Cheng-ge took a step forward with his left foot, and the entire left side of his body covered with red stripes on a white background seemed to expand a bit, and the terrifying power was transmitted to Shishigawa along his body. Bang! The air was instantly torn apart, and the one who tore the air apart was Shishigawa, who was directly blown away. Boom! Shishigawa's entire body hit the wall at the edge of the area like a cannonball, and a large number of cracks spread out in all directions, forming the outline of a skeleton demon again. The next moment, while Cheng-ge was still in that fist-raising posture, the wall of the area that Shishigawa had collapsed, revealing Ichigo Kurosaki, who was about to raise Tensa Zanjutsu to try to destroy the wall of the area behind him. Ichigo Kurosaki was stunned, and then waved to Cheng-ge from a distance. Cheng-ge was slightly startled, and his left hand, which had not yet been put down, subconsciously raised a thumb to Ichigo Kurosaki. Shishigawa, who fell to the ground, heard the words, and everything in front of him seemed to be rapidly dimming, but he saw the familiar half-figure in the distance. Tsukushima. However, Ichigo Kurosaki soon noticed that Cheng-ge's condition seemed to be a little bad, and the right side of his body seemed to have collapsed, and he could barely stand up, completely relying on the left side of his body. "Chad, are you okay?" "No, it's just a minor injury." Cheng-ge smiled and replied. However, Kurosaki Ichigo observed closely and found that Cheng-ge's injury was definitely not as serious as he had imagined, so he said subconsciously, "No, we must find our time for treatment as soon as possible." After a pause, Kurosaki Ichigo suddenly reacted and spoke. "After these guys were given some power by Jinjoko, each of them is as strong as the captain of the 13th Division, and except for Uncle Kurosaki and Jinjoko, there are exactly 6 of us on the other side." In an instant, Cheng-ge also reacted and said, "So, Inoue-san is probably also dealing with a full bringer alone?" "Oh no, Orime's combat ability is quite average." After a pause, Kurosaki Ichigo's expression became serious and he said, Not only Oraim, but also Miss Rem and Miss Ying may be in big trouble. We must find them as soon as possible. Upon hearing this, Chagtosho nodded with a serious expression, and then said, "But, where should we look? The areas of Ichigo and I add up to 6 directions now." In an instant, Kurosaki Ichigo's expression also became a little ugly. After all, Kurosaki Ichigo has personally confirmed the defensive strength of the walls of these areas. It is necessary to use Getsuga Sky Strike repeatedly with full strength, or Chagtosho's full strength magic secret strike to destroy them. And just when Kurosaki Ichigo and Chagtosho were extremely worried, in a large area that was almost merged from 3 standard areas, Synopsis, Niimu and Inoue Oraim were constantly hiding and running away, but they were forced into an unavoidable corner by Doving Liluka, today's Awakariko, and Jackie. Chapter 530. Desperate Situation. Synopsis, who looked the cutest, protected Inoue Oraim and Mkumu behind him, and looked at the 3 Fullbringers in front of him expressionlessly. That looked inexplicably funny. However, Inoue Oraim was not good at fighting, and Mkumu's fighting level was only that of an ordinary vice-captain even if he recovered his Shinigami transformation. There was no way to compare with the Execution members who were given power by Jinjuku. In front of Synopsis, there were Awakariko and Jackie, who had changed their appearance after receiving Jinjuku's power. Before, Awakariko, who looked like a standard waiter, had 5 connected rings on the eye mask that originally covered her right eye, and a shaped symbol on the light armor covering her left chest and trousers. Jackie, a dark-skinned woman who looked quite sturdy, had special devices similar to motorcycle engines on her shoulders, and her feet were wearing knee-high gradient thick boots with a pair of decorations extending backwards. As for the other Fullbring user, the girl with twin ponytails, Poison Mine Liluka, except that her hat seemed to have turned into rabbit ears, she was a little further away, as if she had no interest in participating in this kind of persecution of humans. Humans, you have nowhere to escape. Awakariko changed her previous polite and elegant posture and spoke with a bit of enthusiasm and excitement on her face. That's right, surrender. Although I am not very willing to be born as a human, since this is an order from Jinjo, you have no room to resist. Jackie pressed down the brim of the military cap and said. After this, Inoue Oraim's expression couldn't help but tense up a lot, and said. What should we do? What should we do? Rem-senpai, Kij-senpai, they are not going to catch us and threaten Kurosaki-sensei, right? However, Synopsis and Niimu were relatively taciturn, and did not say anything to comfort Inoue Oraim. Then, just as Niimu took a step forward and prepared to leave the puppet state to fight, Synopsis raised his arm to block Niimu and said, You protect Miss Oraim, I'll do it. Niimu turned his eyes and looked at this colleague who had been competing with him for favor for several years, and asked back, Can you do it? Synopsis glanced at Niimu and said, No matter what, I'm better than you. I'm the perfect servant of the store manager. It was just the argument between Synopsis and Niimu that made Awakariko laugh. Ha ha ha, an ordinary human dares to speak so arrogantly. Almost as soon as Awakariko finished speaking, his figure suddenly appeared beside Synopsis and kicked at Synopsis with a whip kick. Bang! The air exploded. Before the whip kick touched Synopsis, it blew the short blue hair of the Rem doll into a frenzy. Bang! The next moment, in front of Awakariko's incredible eyes, Synopsis, who seemed to have no spiritual pressure at all, blocked his whip kick with his hands crossed. How is it possible? Awakariko's smile suddenly froze. This power given by Lord Jinjo is enough to defeat the so-called captain-level death god. How could it be blocked by a mere human? As if the thing she was most proud of was provoked and insulted, Awakariko roared and chose to use her Fullbring ability Time No Lies at the disdainful human in front of her without hesitation. As a strange ability that can set a time limit mechanism and make items change when the set time limit is exceeded, Time No Lies has been strengthened and now appears in a materialized way at the button on Awakariko's left shoulder. As Awakariko dialed the number on the button to 3, Awakariko's entire body size increased several times, and the momentum that burst out of her body was even more amazing. She looked almost as good as Yamai among the 10s batter. Boom. The next moment, Awakariko just stepped on the ground, and the whole area trembled faintly. In the somewhat horrified eyes of Inoue Oraim, Awakariko's fist, which was almost as big as the entire Rem doll, fell towards Synopsis. Synopsis frowned slightly, but instead of retreating, he advanced, and his slender fist slammed to counterattack. Bang! The two completely disproportionate fists collided with each other, but it instantly set off a huge storm. If it weren't for Nayan hugging in Leoraim in time, Leoraim would have been almost blown away. Equally matched. In Tsuzawa-Kuriko's incredible eyes, the fists of both sides were deadlocked. How is this possible? The only remaining eye of Tsuzawa-Kuriko revealed great shock. An ordinary human without full bring only blocked her with his flesh? At this moment, Tsuzawa-Kuriko felt that her outlook on life had been hit by an unprecedented huge impact. At this moment, Jackie's figure moved, and the device on her right shoulder suddenly sprayed a large amount of black liquid that could quickly solidify, covering the full set of full-bring armor on her body. Jackie's full-bring ability Soul Burial Boots is not complicated. In essence, in addition to strengthening the body to a certain extent, the more substances the boots are contaminated with, the more powerful the kid can be. After actively covering her whole body with black liquid substances, Jackie can instantly maximize the power of the Soul Burial Boots and simultaneously increase the maximum limit of her body's ability to withstand kicks. Jackie's figure appeared behind Synopsis, raised her long legs full of explosive power and pointed directly at Synopsis' ribs, and spoke. "Don't die, human." Almost as soon as the word fell, Synopsis, who was still resisting Kuriko Tozawa, was hit by this blow. The whole person was instantly blown away and directly hit the wall of the area behind Orion. "Rem Senpai!" Orion shouted with a heartache, and instinctively wanted to run towards Synopsis and shouted. "Rem Senpai, hold on, I will treat you immediately." However, before Orion took 2 steps, the cute and somewhat rebellious girl Liluka blocked in front of Orion and spoke. "Forget it. Although it is a pity, it is impossible for an ordinary human to survive after being kicked by Jackie with all her strength." After a pause, Liluka continued to persuade. "Surrender, otherwise Tsuzawa and Jackie will show no mercy to you." Almost as soon as the words of Poison Bee Liluka fell, Tsuzawa-Kuriko and Jackie walked behind Leoraim and Nikon Mew, surrounding them and blocking all retreat routes. Chapter 531 True Attitude, Part 3 Desperate. "Just surrender, impossible. I will never yield to you guys." Leoraim rejected the proposal of Venom B. Liluka without hesitation, and put on a posture ready to fight. Although Leoraim knew that she could not play much role in the frontal battle, she would rather die in battle than become a burden to Kurosaki's teacher. As for Nirvana, he also looked at the full-bringers in front of him with a calm and solemn expression. Pure fighting is not something Nirvana is good at. The spiritual pressure of these full-bringers is not inferior to that of ordinary captains, and it is far beyond the limit that Nirvana, who is only the vice-captain, can deal with. However, perhaps rationality makes such a judgment, but Nirvana is doing something that is completely related to rationality. In response, Tsuzawa-Kuriko's expression revealed a hint of playfulness, and when she moved her body and was about to completely crush the 2 little ghosts in front of her into meat paste. Bang! Synopsis walked out again from the wall of the area covered by a puff of smoke. What made Tsuzawa-Kuriko, Jackie, and Venom B. Liluka feel incredible was that Synopsis seemed to be unscathed. How is it possible? He was unscathed after taking my blow. Is this really something that an ordinary human can do? What's wrong with this guy? However, at this moment, Synopsis' face was filled with anger and murderous intent, and he said something that made Tsuzawa-Kuriko and the others shudder. You destroyed the precious body that the master gave me, you deserve to die." As he spoke, Synopsis slightly turned his body, and the ribs where Jackie kicked him were torn in the mate's uniform, revealing the delicate white skin and the scars with a little blood inside. This is a body that only the master has the right to manipulate at will, but it was damaged by filthy things. Unforgivable, unforgivable, unforgivable. With each unforgivable word, the spiritual pressure that erupted from the harem doll, which originally looked petite, cute and harmless, became several times more terrifying. More importantly, that spiritual pressure was the spiritual pressure of a hollow. When the last unforgivable was finished, the entire area was completely shrouded by this huge and extremely terrifying spiritual pressure. Indistinctly, everyone in the area seemed to see the eternal dark night of Hukomundo pressing on their hearts. "Orion, Kaj, please don't tell anyone what you see next," Synopsis said lightly. The next moment, a spirit slowly emerged from the harem doll. However, what shocked Orion and Niu was that the spirit that emerged from the harem doll was actually this little boy. As for Tsuzawa-Kuriko, Jackie, and Poison Bee Liluka, they had no extra thoughts to notice the true appearance of Synopsis. Extreme fear had already filled their hearts. Great hollow. And this is definitely not the spiritual pressure of a Cheng-ge's, wow, vastode. This is the highest level Great Hollow Vastode. But why doesn't he have any characteristics related to hollows? Could he be the Seireitei in the rumors? It's a lie, it's a lie. For a moment, as Synopsis' true form appeared in front of Zanpakutō and others, they subconsciously stepped back a few steps. The next moment, Synopsis slowly pulled out the zanpakutō formed after the Seireitei at his waist, Sunspin. When Seireitei reacted again, a large amount of blood burst out of Zanpakutō, Jackie, and poisoned Vilaluca's bodies at the same time, and then they fell to the ground. Instant kill. There is no doubt that although Synopsis once accumulated the spiritual power of the entire Great Hollow Forest and was completely absorbed by Senju Cheng, after Synopsis was transformed into an Seireitei by Senju Cheng, at this moment, Synopsis is theoretically almost the pinnacle that a hollow can reach, that is, the top-level Great Hollow Vastode who has perfectly transformed into an Seireitei. An ordinary captain is almost as weak as an ordinary team member in front of a Great Hollow of this level. It was not until Synopsis slowly put his zanpakutō back into the scabbard that Seireitei and Miku gradually reacted and looked at Synopsis with some straight eyes. However, Synopsis completely ignored the intentions of Seireitei and Miku, and looked at the broken rem doll in his hand with a self-blaming face, as if he had fallen into autism. Seireitei slowly raised her hand and carefully suggested, can I try to repair it? Synopsis' eyes clearly revealed a look of surprise, and he spoke. Ms. Seireitei, please make sure to fix it. Thank you very much. Yes. Seireitei, who was flattered, responded quickly, and then used the power of Double Heaven Shield on the slightly damaged part of the rem doll. What surprised Seireitei was that this seemed to be only a very minor injury, but it seemed to have great resistance when it was repaired. However, Seireitei's eyes focused, and the injuries on the rem doll recovered rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Success, success. Seireitei touched the sweat on her forehead, feeling that she had worked harder than healing Ichigo Kurosaki 10 times. Synopsis' face was also full of surprise, and then he went straight back to the rem doll. Soon, the rem doll stood up again, and then tried to move. It's really been repaired, Ms. Seireitei is so amazing. This body is. When he said this, Synopsis' voice suddenly paused, and he turned to thank Seireitei seriously. Thank you. No, you're welcome. Instead, I need to thank Rem-senpai for protecting me. When Seireitei said this subconsciously, she subconsciously thought of the appearance of Synopsis' real body in her mind, and her expression became a little weird. Just at this time, boom. The wall of an area collapsed, and Ichigo Kurosaki and the seriously injured Chagtosho appeared on the other side. Then, Ichigo Kurosaki's figure flashed and appeared in front of Seireitei and others. When Ichigo Kurosaki noticed that part of Synopsis' clothes were damaged at the ribs, he couldn't help but subconsciously approached and asked with concern. Ms. Rem, are you okay? Are you injured anywhere? Seireitei opened her mouth and suddenly remembered that she seemed to have accidentally heard Ichigo Kurosaki mention that when he was a child, he had a strong admiration and hazy feeling for a cute sister in the flower shop. Just thinking of the true attitude that Synopsis had just shown, Seireitei's expression couldn't help but become a little weird. Chapter 532 Huge Damage. As for Kurosaki Ichigo's concern, Synopsis still maintained the maid's etiquette and invisible alienation, and answered. Thank you for your concern, I'm fine. Are you really fine? Kurosaki Ichigo asked. I've already answered once, and your repeated inquiries will only make people feel harassed. Synopsis replied. Facing this cute sister who was almost enlightened in the past, Kurosaki Ichigo seemed to have no resistance and answered shyly. Yes, I'm sorry. Seeing this scene, Seireitei couldn't help but twitch a little at the corner of her mouth, and her mind subconsciously associated with some not-so-good scenes. At this moment, Chad Yasutara's voice sounded behind Seireitei. Seireitei-san, can you help me treat it? Yes. Seireitei responded subconsciously, and turned around to find that Chad Yasutara was seriously injured, and half of his body seemed to collapse softly. But even so, Chad Yasutara's waist was still so straight with only the other half of his body supporting his body. Then, Seireitei hurriedly used the Double Heaven Return Shield to treat Chad Yasutara, and couldn't help asking. Chad, don't you feel any pain? Chad Yasutara looked at Kurosaki Ichigo with a silent expression, and said with a light in his eyes. For Ichigo, these can be easily endured. Seireitei. If it was said before today, Seireitei would only sigh at the deep bond between Kurosaki Ichigo and Chad Yasutara when she heard this sentence. However, at this moment, under some preconceived notions, Oriminale subconsciously took a step back, revealing a trace of fear in her eyes. Is this becoming popular in Karakura town? At this moment, the surrounding space trembled and quickly began to collapse and disintegrate. Kurosaki Ichigo and others were slightly dazed, and when they regained their feet on the ground, they appeared on the road outside the apartment. About 100 meters away from Ichigo, Kurosaki and the others, Ryashida, who maintained his muscle dragon form, clamped Yakiya around his waist. His sturdy arms formed a strong contrast with Yakiya's small head. Yakiya seemed to have been completely squeezed unconscious. It must be said that except for Kyubai, who did not hold back at all, the others held back a little against the Kusukushin members who were also humans, and did not hurt their lives. Even the extremely angry Synopsis, due to the rules that Makoto Senju had set for him, was not allowed to hurt humans without Makoto Senju's permission, so Kuriko Tsuzawa, Jackie, and Liluka Dovden were only seriously injured and unconscious. However, before Ichigo, Kurosaki and the others could say anything, they were soon attracted by the powerful spiritual pressure that erupted from Jinchokiko on the other side. A posture that is close to a hollow, a spiritual pressure that is so strong that the air seems to be trembling, and the roars that are constantly emitted unintentionally. At this moment, Jinchokiko is not so much a human as a monster, and his power seems to be on the verge of losing control. Roar. Jinchokiko, who seems to be completely surrounded by a skeleton, lets out a huge roar, and the ferocious giant sword in his hand seems to be connected to Jinchokiko, and he continuously attacks Senju Makoto. Is that a hollow? Seeing this, Ichigo Kurosaki almost subconsciously said, and then denied it. No, there is no hollow spiritual pressure at all, but what's the matter with this posture? Now is not the time to discuss this issue, go help Uncle Kurosaki first. Ishida threw Yakiya, who was squeezed unconscious by him, to the ground, and spoke urgently, wanting to go forward to help Senju Makoto. Seeing this, Ichigo Kurosaki, who was slow to realize it, also followed Ishida and went to Jinchokiko. After all, the spiritual pressure and posture that Jinchokiko now exudes are extremely astonishing. In a faint way, his spiritual pressure has even surpassed that of Captain General Yamamoto in his Shikai state. However, at this moment, Makoto Senju suddenly spoke up to stop Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashida from doing what they did. Don't come over. Suddenly, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashida paused. Based on their trust and respect for Makoto Senju, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashida did not approach them again, but they also kept a distance that was not too far away so that they could intervene at any time. It seems that the spiritual pressure of Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashida approached each other, which further stimulated Jinchokiko, causing his posture and spiritual pressure to go out of control even further. Roar. Under a slash that Makoto Senju could not avoid, Makoto Senju condensed a spiritual knife in his hand to block it. The huge roar and airwave almost exploded like a storm, and even some houses around collapsed directly under the aftermath. Fortunately, the Kusukushin base is in a remote area of Minmu City, surrounded by large areas of nearly abandoned houses, otherwise the aftermath alone would be enough to cause more than 1,000 human casualties. And staring at Jinchokiko in front of him from a close distance, on the surface, Jinchokiko's power seems to be simply out of control. Due to the plunder of too many full-bring abilities, Jinchokiko has entered a state of abnormality that is difficult to control. But, this state, is it really just an abnormality? Feeling the heavy pressure transmitted by the ferocious giant sword, Senju Makoto's eyes can't help but condense slightly. Rather than saying it is an abnormality, Senju Makoto feels that this is more like evolution, but, this is an evolution that has completely lost control and is not centered on Jinchokiko's will. The essence of Fullbring is that the body has a part of the body fragments of the Soul King scattered in the world, and Jinchokiko can plunder the Fullbring abilities of others, and will not plunder even that part of the fragments, and then because there are too many Soul King fragments, when this thought emerged, Senju Makoto's intuition felt that this is very likely to be the truth. Roar! The next moment, Jinchokiko opened his mouth, revealing his hideous teeth. As he roared, a foul breath came towards him, causing Senju Makoto's face to change slightly. Instantly, Senju Makoto felt that he had never suffered such a huge amount of damage when he attacked Jinglitung some time ago, and he instinctively retreated backwards. However, Jinchokiko was like a wild beast, chasing Senju Makoto again. Senju Makoto did not react to the ferocious giant sword raised high, but the mouth that opened again made Senju Makoto's face change. Shut up. The next moment, Senju Makoto, who had been retreating, turned around and approached Jinchokiko on his own initiative, hitting Jinchokiko's chin with an elbow. Chapter 533 The so-called position. Jinchokiko's evolution within the range that Makoto Senju is confident of controlling is tolerable, therefore, in this way, Makoto Senju can observe some answers that he is also pursuing through Jinchoko. However, evolution is evolution, and opening his mouth to launch a bad breath attack is a bit unbearable for Makoto Senju. Bang! With this blow, Jinchokiko's entire jaw seemed to have undergone a huge deformation, and some of the broken teeth flew out directly, and Jinchokiko was blown up on the spot. Seeing this scene, Seireitei, who was standing aside, felt yearning. Although Makoto Senju had rarely shown the ability of close combat in his usual battles, Seireitei knew very well that Makoto Senju's attainments in this area were actually quite amazing. The former Iron Mountain backbone had already made Seireitei feel that he would benefit from it for the rest of his life. This elbow strike made Seireitei remember it firmly in his heart, imagining that it would be great if this strike could hit Seirei's jaw and completely knock all his teeth out. However, what Senju Makoto did not expect was that Jinchokiko seemed to have an ability similar to super speed regeneration. While he was still flying, his injuries had already begun to regenerate at a speed visible to the naked eye. This scene undoubtedly shocked Senju Makoto a little. After all, Jinchokiko's body is a human body, not a hollow spirit body. And the human body is mainly composed of instruments. Super speed regeneration in the instrument state. The next moment, Senju Makoto's figure flashed, and he caught up with Jinchokiko in an instant. And Jinchokiko's bone tail, which evolved at some point, suddenly swung towards Senju Makoto's waist, and the shocking momentum seemed to cut Senju Makoto in half. Bang! Senju Makoto grabbed Jinchokiko's tail with his bare hands, in order to ensure that he could get relatively complete experimental materials. Senju Makoto was ready to stop Jinchokiko from evolving further. Rain Dragon! Senju Makoto shouted. Seireitei immediately understood and threw the pendant hanging around his neck towards Senju Makoto. When the pendant fell into Senju Makoto's hand, it instantly turned into a halberd. And unlike the one in Seirei's hand, this halberd was longer and larger, wrapped with a large amount of light from the gathering of spirit particles. Immediately afterwards, Senju Makoto turned the halberd in his hand and suddenly stacked it towards Jinchokiko in front of him, roar. As if instinctively sensing a fatal threat, Jinchokiko roared and raised the ferocious giant sword to block it in front of him. But, boom! This halberd directly smashed the ferocious giant sword and completely penetrated Jinchokiko's chest, and took Jinchokiko to the ground like a meteorite, until he was completely nailed to the ground. When Senju Makoto slowly fell to the ground, Kurosaki Ichigo and Seireitei also came over. Jinchokiko, who was nailed to the ground with his chest pierced, had no life at all. Did this guy just die like that? Kurosaki Ichigo said with some emotion. He didn't die at this moment, but he had already truly died when he plundered the power beyond his control. Senju Makoto said lightly. As a Shinigami agent, he stood against the Seireitei, and as a Fullbringer, he cooperated with his enemies to plunder the power of other Fullbringers. He lost all his own positions, and only had ambition and hatred left. What a pathetic guy. As soon as these words came out, Kurosaki Ichigo and Seirei's eyes flickered slightly. In these words, Senju Makoto was not so much evaluating Jinchokiko was hinting and reminding Kurosaki Ichigo and Seireitei. Uncle Kurosaki's position is my position. Seireitei responded firmly, almost subconsciously. On the contrary, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes revealed a trace of confusion. For Kurosaki Ichigo, it seems that there are many things worth his all to protect, but the position, what is my own position? Human? Or a god of death? For a moment, Kurosaki Ichigo did not speak for a long time. And Senju Makoto simply checked the changes that had occurred in Jinchokiko's body. As expected, as Senju Makoto had originally guessed, a large number of things suspected to be Soul King fragments were found in Jinchokiko's body, and those fragments seemed to be further combined with Jinchokiko's body. Just as Senju Makoto had judged before, it is difficult for spirit particles and instrument particles to further combine and react with each other normally. Among humans, only the Quincy is a relatively common exception. However, the Quincy can absorb spirit particles with the body of the instrument particle, which is entirely due to the Quincy blood in their bodies. Now, Jinchokiko's situation is more like the body of the instrument particle combined with the Soul King fragment, which caused the body of the instrument particle to passively adapt to a certain degree of change. To a certain extent, it is as if the body composed of the instrument particle is forced to expand and evolve like a container. Senju Cheng thought silently, and just when he couldn't help but want to further study Jinchokiko on the spot, a gate appeared beside Senju Cheng, and Urahara Kisuke and Shibuya Yorishi walked out with serious faces and spoke. Mr. Kurosaki Cheng, the Seireitei is in big trouble and needs your help. It was only at this moment that Urahara Kisuke saw Jinchokiko's body clearly, and a deep surprise flashed in his eyes. However, before Urahara Kisuke could continue to speak, Ishitarai blocked in front of Urahara Kisuke. His huge body in the muscle dragon form made Urahara Kisuke's face only facing Ishitarai's chest muscles. Urahara Kisuke, isn't your request a bit too rude? Not long ago, we were being hunted by the 13th Division, and now you want us to help the Seireitei? Ishitarai said dissatisfiedly. Ru has some truth in what he said. Senju Cheng stood up and said. Although I originally had no intention of being an enemy of the Seireitei, we are now in a hostile state with the 13, and we are not in a position to interfere in the affairs of the Seireitei. This is all just a misunderstanding, Urahara Kisuke said with a wry smile. Misunderstanding? Ishitarai said with a dissatisfied tone. When the 13 besieged us before, you didn't show up to rescue us and said nothing about the siege. What's the point of saying this now? No, in fact, it is precisely because I know that Mr. Kurosaki Cheng and others are innocent, and I know that pure words cannot convince the Seireitei. So after knowing the description of Yukita Jushiro's attack, I hurriedly went to Soul Society with Yorishi to investigate. Urahara Kisuke pressed down the brim of his hat and said in a somewhat solemn tone. The development of things is far beyond my imagination. Chapter 534 Tsuneshiro Tokinada. Time goes a little further. After Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni led nearly half of the captains of the current 13th Gotti squad and left the Seireitei for Kurakura town. Among the captains who stayed behind in the Seireitei, Yukita Jushiro was seriously injured, Yunohana Retsu was the captain of the healing squad, and Kurosachi Mairi also focused on research and development capabilities. Therefore, in the huge Seireitei, Kinpachi Zaraki was almost the only captain who could fight at any time, and the defensor of the Seireitei was almost reduced to the lowest level in history. On the hill of Double Strike. Because the King of Destruction was destroyed by Senju Cheng, and the terrain was severely damaged after a war, this place has almost become a barren white land in the Seireitei. However, this is still one of the highest points in the Seireitei. At this moment, as the wind gradually rose, two figures stood on the edge of the hill of Double Strike, as if they were looking down at the Seireitei below, and as if they were going to step on the entire Seireitei under their feet. Just as planned, the defensor of the Seireitei is at an unprecedented low level, and the original strong reinforcements of the Gotti 13, such as Kurosaki Cheng, Kurosaki Ichigo, and Ishitarai, should have completely broken with the Gotti 13. Among them, the mysterious existence with a cloak covering his face completely made a rather sinister and playful voice. And, with Jinchokiko holding them back, Kurosaki Cheng and his guys might be killed directly, and they will no longer cause any obstacles to the plan. The strong wind blew, revealing a corner of the mysterious existence's face. He had dark green hair and a mouth that seemed to be curved at all times, similar to Jin Ichimura, but the coldness he exuded was much stronger than Jin Ichimura. Sojiro Kusanagi, who was wearing a mask, turned his head and looked at the mysterious existence beside him, and information about the other party emerged in his mind. Tsuneshiro Tokinada. That is, he is the only direct member of the Tsuneshiro family that was destroyed not long ago, and he controls a large number of resources and secrets belonging to the Tsuneshiro family. When Kusanagi Sojiro got a certain degree of support from Aizen Sasuke and quietly returned from Hukomundo to Seireitei to plan the attack on the King's Seal, Tsuneshiro Tokinada took the initiative to appear in front of Kusanagi Sojiro and propose cooperation. Although Kusanagi Sojiro knew the location of the King's Seal clearly, he was just a student of the Mao Academy of Spiritual Arts in the past, and his understanding of Seireitei and the 13th Gotti squad was far from enough. Tsuneshiro Tokinada did not make any requests, and the goal he mentioned was just to hope that Kusanagi Sojiro could kill a large number of Shinigami to avenge the hatred of the 13th Gotti squad for watching the Tsuneshiro family being destroyed. In this regard, Kusanagi Sojiro, who intended to avenge Seireitei, obviously could not refuse this seemingly perfect partner. So far, it is also wonder the planning of Tsuneshiro Tokinada that Kusanagi Sojiro has reached a situation that is almost unimaginable. Now is undoubtedly the best time to destroy the Seireitei. However, Kusanagi Sojiro stared at Tsuneshiro Tokinada beside him and said, Then why didn't you choose to let Kurosaki Makoto and Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni fight to the death, but let Kusukushin take the opportunity to take Kurosaki Makoto and others away? There is no such opportunity. Tsunayoshiro Tokinada shook his head and did not continue to explain. Instead, he said, on the contrary, Captain Yamamoto has already led the other captains to return to the Seireitei. The time you have bought is not much. Whether you can destroy this Seireitei full of filth and injustice depends on whether you can grasp it. These words full of hints almost made Kusanagi Sojiro instantly recall the past that made him hate it deeply. Once, under the ideological education of the Shinen Spiritual Academy, Kusanagi Sojiro hoped to be like most of the Shinigami, carrying the name of Gotti and fighting with the Hollows to the last glorious moment in order to maintain the peace between Soul Society and the real world. However, when Kusanagi Sojiro awakened a zanpakutō named Horinmara that was exactly the same as his best friend Hitsuge Yaeshiro, and the news reached the Central 46th room, everything turned out to be something Kusanagi Sojiro had never expected. He and Hitsuge Yaeshiro were brought to the Central 46th room as criminals, and were forced to fight Hitsuge Yaeshiro head-on. The winner would continue to hold Horinmara. The loser would die. Kusanagi Sojiro was angry, resentful, desperate, but powerless, until he died, and then he was reborn in Hutomundo under the power of the King's Seal. Being betrayed by his former beliefs undoubtedly magnified Kusanagi Sojiro's anger and resentment towards the Seireitei to an unimaginable degree. At this moment, the Seireitei, which Kusanagi Sojiro had hoped to join countless times, was so dazzling and disgusting in Kusanagi Sojiro's eyes that he wished to destroy the entire Seireitei completely and immediately. As Kusanagi Sojiro took out the King's Seal from his arms, King's Seal. Within the limited range of spiritual pressure, one can have absolute control over the time, space and even dimensions specified within the range. The next moment, behind Kusanagi Sojiro, a door that seemed to cross the broken world and led directly to Hutomundo opened. First, 10 Arances of the level of Uchikage came out, followed by a large number of Jillians and lower-level hollows that continued to swarm out. The spiritual pressure of a large number of hollows that appeared at the double kill hill almost instantly triggered the alarm of the Seireitei. Inside the 11th Division's barracks, Kinpachi Zaraki, who was originally bored watching Madarumi Ikaku and Ayakawa's friendly sparring, suddenly became excited and turned his head to look in the direction of the double kill hill. Hollow. This is great. The next moment, completely ignoring the reactions of his subordinates, Kinpachi Zaraki's burly body rushed out in the direction of the double kill hill that could be seen in the distance. Kusaka Yara also jumped onto Kinpachi Zaraki's shoulder at the right time, pointed his finger at the double killing hill, and shouted crisply, "Go! Kensuke!" Inside the 4th Division's barracks, Unohana Retsu, who was originally wiping that blade at his zanpakutō in that courtyard and seemed to be making some preparations, raised her beautiful eyes towards the double killing hill. Immediately, Iokiriza and Kotetsuin rushed to Unohana Retsu. "Captain, it's an emergency." A large number of hollows' spiritual pressure appeared at the double killing hill. "I know." Unohana Retsu's expression did not change, but he asked a seemingly irrelevant question instead. "Didn't the Captain-in-Chief arrest Kurosaki Makoto and others? Have any results been reported back?" Not yet. Iokiriza replied. "Yeah." Unohana Retsu's eyelids drooped slightly, still wiping that blade slowly, and then said, "The 4th Division should be ready to provide medical assistance at any time." Chapter 535. The Tattoo of Sincerity. Ahem. In the 4th Division's barracks, Yukita Jashiro, who was already in very poor health, struggled to get up. When the position of vice captain in the 4th Division was vacant, the acting vice captain of the 13th Division, Kotetsukin and Kotsubaki Sentaro, rushed into the ward to report the emergency. But they saw Yukita Jashiro wearing the captain's adori and tied his zanpakutō around his waist. "Captain, you are not going to participate in the battle?" "No, Captain, you just woke up, and your seriously injured body can't fight at all." Kotetsukin and Kotsubaki Sentaro hurriedly persuaded him. However, when Yukita Jashiro turned his head, his extremely pale face revealed an unshakable determination, and he said, "As the captain, behind you is the Seireitei, we have no way to retreat." In an instant, Kotetsukin and Kotsubaki Sentaro could hardly hold back their chairs, and hurriedly followed Yukita Jashiro's steps towards the double killing hill. However, although almost the entire Gotti 13 divisions responded to the appearance of the Hollow's spiritual pressure, chaos was inevitable as most divisions lacked captains and vice captains to take charge of the situation. On the contrary, Divisions 3, 5, and 9, which had been supported by their vice-captains for some time due to the defection of their captains, were the first to respond and formed the first line of defense outside the double-killing hill. Vice-captains Kira Ijiru, Hinamura Mamo, and Hisaji stood at the forefront of the defense line, watching the group of hollows that were already faintly visible on the double-killing hill. It is obvious that the incident of a group of hollows directly attacking the Seireitei only occurs once every hundreds of years in history, but it has only been a few days since the last time a group of hollows appeared, and now it has appeared again. It is really unlucky. Kira Ijiru said with a decadent and somewhat gloomy look. The captains haven't come back yet. Can we really stop the hollows with just me, ourselves? Hinamura Mamo nervously clenched his zanpakutō and spoke with self-doubt. Yes. In response to Kira Ijiru's decadence and Hinamura Mamo's lack of confidence, there was an extremely firm voice. Standing at the front, Hisaji lowered his eyes slightly and looked forward firmly, with one hand gently touching the tattoo on his cheek, which was the word. Then, Hisaji felt the gazes of Kira Ijiru and Hinamura Mamo and spoke. The Seireitei must be defended, and it must be defended no matter what. The place that the adult sacrificed his life to protect, I will never allow anyone to destroy it. As if infected by Hisaji's unshakable belief, the expressions of Kira Ijiru and Hinamura Mamo gradually became firm. Here they come. The next moment, 10 Aranses at the Cheng-ge level led a large number of Jillians and ordinary hollows from all directions of the double-killing hill and charged towards the Seireitei below. This defense line formed by the 3, 5 and 9 divisions was the first to bear the impact. The number of enemies is about 3 Aranses at the Cheng-ge level, 20 Jillians and hundreds of ordinary hollows. Kira Ijiru glanced and quickly judged the group of hollows that were charging down the defense line in front of him, and gave a simple reminder loudly. Leave the Aranses at the Cheng-ge level to the vice-captains, and the officers will work together to stop the Jillians. However, before Kira Ijiru could finish speaking, one of the fastest Aranses appeared in front of Kira Ijiru in the blink of an eye, and his zanpakutō slashed at Kira Ijiru's head before he could react. Ding! However, Hisaji showed a strength far beyond that of an ordinary vice-captain. He blocked the knight for Kira Ijiru after being attacked, and then kicked the Aransei away with a whip kick. I will try to kill the 2 Aranses as soon as possible. Please work together to hold back one Aransei as much as possible. Hisaji said, and rushed towards the Aransei that was kicked away into the group of hollows alone. This scene undoubtedly stunned Kira Ijiru and Hinamura Mamo. In the memories of Kira Ijiru and Hinamura Mamo, Hisaji was just a senior who was slightly older than them by 1 or 2 years. His usual style of doing things was also calm and low-key, and his presence was not high. What Kira Ijiru and Hinamura Mamo did not expect was that Hisaji, who was also a vice-captain, not only kicked away an Aransei of the Cheng-ge level with one blow, but also confidently planned to deal with 2 Aranses at the Cheng-ge level at the same time. You know, in theory on paper, the Aransei of the Cheng-ge level is undoubtedly equivalent to the existence of the captain level. Although these Aransei of the Cheng-ge level are low-value failures in the eyes of Asian Sussex, they are far from being dealt with by a vice-captain alone. It is precisely for this reason that when Kira Ijiru and Hinamura Mamo sensed the spiritual pressure of those Aransei of the Cheng-ge level, they were so decadent and unconfident. And Hisaji's behavior of almost treating the group of hollows in front of him as nothing also completely angered the Aransei. How dare a mere death god be so arrogant? The next moment, an Aransei who retained many fish characteristics on his body said, and a large number of hollows took the lead in besieging Hisaji. Cut it off, Kazeshin. As Hisaji said, the shape of the zanpakutō in his hand changed greatly, turning into 2 double-headed scythes strung together by chains, in a thin shape, with an arc similar to that of a silver moon scimitar. Then, in the hands of Hisaji, Kazeshima completely turned into a terrifying strangling machine. Wherever it passed, it seemed as if there were invisible sickle weasels circling around Hisaji. Any hollow that approached Hisaji within a certain range was sliced directly. This scene also shocked the Shinigami behind him. The fighting power displayed by Hisaji, the posture of madly harvesting and slaughtering the group of hollows like mowing grass, seemed to have found the backbone of the Shinigami. However, the next moment, the Aransei that was previously knocked away by Hisaji and retained many birth features on his body gathered hollow flashes from a distance towards Hisaji, and, including the 20 slow-moving Killians, they also began to gather hollow flashes at the same time. It's a hollow flash. Vice-Captain Hisaji, be careful. Get out of the way. Shuni. Amid the loud reminders of the Shinigami behind him, Seireitei, who was originally trying to dodge, suddenly stopped. Behind me is the defense line formed by the soldiers. If I dodge, they will definitely be affected. During this moment of hesitation, a bird Seireitei and 20 Jillions burst out at the same time towards Seireitei. In the dazzling light of the hollow flash, the tattoo of the word on Seireitei's cheek became more and more obvious. P.S. Recently, due to wrist problems, my typing speed has dropped significantly, so I will guarantee 2 updates at least. I will try my best to keep up with the 3rd update, but it will usually be a little late to finish, please forgive me. In addition, can I ask for a monthly ticket, weekly? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 536. Wind Death and No Breath Retreat. No. Seireitei's eyes seemed to be shining, and he took a step forward to face the large piece of void flash, growling. Decades ago, when the Tso died in the Battle of Huko Mundo, I was not able to participate. Now, how can I retreat? This piece of land cherished by the Tso, I will protect it. Wind Death Absolute Breath. The next moment, the Wind Death in Seireitei's hand completely turned into a large afterimage that seemed to have completely cut off even the sound, and collided with the large piece of void flash with a bang. Unlike the original trajectory, Seireitei always hated his zanpakutō and resisted that power, under the influence of Senju Cheng. In addition to Senju Cheng's superposition of spirits to greatly increase Seireitei's upper limit, Seireitei's desires to become a sharp blade in Senju Cheng's hands. In fact, as early as when he graduated from the Mao Spiritual Academy, Seireitei was already close to the edge of Bankai. However, after learning about the death of Senju Cheng, Seireitei entered a period of confusion that lasted for decades. Every day, in addition to fulfilling his duties as a vice captain, he would just stare blankly at Seireitei. What's the use of having power? The adult who deserves my power is no longer here, so what value does my life have? Boom boom boom. As Seireitei spun and cut madly, he continued to cut into pieces the energy-only void flash, and the spiritual pressure that burst out from Seireitei's body was also rising wildly. However, this piece of land that was once protected by the adult with his life must not be allowed to be defiled like this. That zanpakutō in a wonksai bang that appeared again must also be figured out what happened. Boom. Until a large piece of void flash finally exploded. However, under the gaze of the Shinigami such as Seireitei and Hinamuraimamu, Seireitei, who was hit by the hollow flash of an Seireitei and 20 Jillions, walked out intact. Moreover, the aura and spiritual pressure emanating from Seireitei were far beyond the scope of what a vice captain should be. Shu has mastered Bankai, right? Hinamuraimamu muttered in shock. No. Seireitei shook his head and also looked at Seireitei, saying, this kind of aura is not something that a Shinigami who has just mastered Bankai can achieve in the state of Shy-Guy. The change in Seireitei also completely aroused the vigilance and attention of the Seireiteis. Immediately, not only the bird Seireitei, but also that fish Seireitei surrounded Seireitei from the left and right in different directions. At this moment, these Seireiteis, who possessed intelligence no less than that of humans, clearly understood that although Seireitei was not wearing a captain's aori, he was definitely a captain-level Shinigami. If they didn't get rid of him, there was no way to wend to the depths of the Seireitei. Don't think you can be arrogant just because you blocked a hollow flash, Shinigami. Go to hell. Then, the two Seireiteis chose to release their blades without hesitation. Howl at the lonely sky, Wind Eagle. Drown everything, Crucian King. In an instant, as the two Seireitei were released, their spiritual pressure soared wildly, and more parts belonging to Hollow appeared on their humanoid bodies. The speed of the Wind Eagle Seireitei also increased suddenly, and its feet that turned into eagle claws grabbed one of the Wind Deaths like lightning. The rather large Crucian King crashed into Seireitei with a bang, as if it was like a cannonball, pushing Seireitei all the way, and directly crushed many ordinary hollows that blocked it into residue. Shuni. Hinamuraimamu subconsciously shouted nervously, but Seireitei reminded her beside her. Be careful. The next moment, Seireitei, who had released his zanpakutō, stood in front of Hinamuraimamu, blocking the third Seireitei that had been quietly hiding among the ordinary hollows and attacking. As the three Seireitei all attacked, this line of defense and the group of hollows officially collided fiercely. Hisagishiri fought 2 Aransei alone, while Hinamuraimamu and Kira cooperated with each other to constantly restrain the other Aransei, and the rest of the officers and soldiers tried their best to block the rest of the hollows that attacked. Blood, with the shouts of the Shinigami and the roars of the hollows, they sounded almost at the same time, and the battle situation also went at a tense state. And this is undoubtedly just a small microcosm of the current Seireitei, and it is also the only line of defense that was established in time. In more areas, because the captains and vice-captains are not in the Seireitei, most of the squads simply cannot form a line of defense in time to unite and resist the group of hollows. For a moment, except for the area where Hisagishiri was, battles broke out in almost all directions with the double killing hill as the center, and the battlefield continued to spread to the larger area of the Seireitei. Boon, seeing this scene, Kusanagi Sojiro on the double killing hill couldn't help but laugh wildly and excitedly. Ha ha ha, this Seireitei that once betrayed me and insulted my beliefs, wail, perish, slide into the abyss of collapse under my power. Seeing this, Tsunayoshiro Tokinada, who was standing next to Kusanagi Sojiro, had a hint of hidden sarcasm and disdain on his lips. Then, Tsunayoshiro Tokinada seemed to sense something and spoke. Sojiro, the Seireitei is left to you. I will find a way to buy you more time to delay Captain General Yamamoto and Kurosaki Makoto and others. Go. Kusanagi Sojiro, who was completely excited by the pleasure of revenge, did not doubt it. Upon hearing this, Tsunayoshiro Tokinada flashed and quickly left the double killing hill. At the same time, he looked back at Kusanagi Sojiro with indifference and contempt in his eyes, and whispered. The fool who didn't even know about the 0th Division wanted to destroy the Seireitei, and just a few breaths after Tsunayoshiro Tokinada left, Urahara Kisuke and Shibuya Yorishi, who had quietly entered the Seireitei to investigate, appeared on the double killing hill, and their eyes were locked on the king's seal held by Kusanagi Sojiro. However, before Shibuya and Yorishi could try to take back the king's seal, a door that seemed to lead to nowhere appeared behind Kusanagi Sojiro again. Yin and Yang, the 2 Aransei girls quickly rushed out of it. Following Yin and Yang was a rather short figure, Hitsuge Ichishiro. Lord Kusanagi, we have brought Hitsuge Ichishiro here. Yin and Yang reported to Kusanagi Sojiro in unison. This address also made Hitsuge Ichishiro, who had been chasing Yin and Yang all the way back to Seireitei, pause, and spoke with a trembling and unbelievable voice. Kusanagi, is it really you? Sojiro. Chapter 537 Friendship and Betrayal. Kusanagi Sojiro slowly turned around and looked at Hitsuge Ichiro's face, which seemed to have not changed much compared to the past. He was still pretending to be cold, and still frowning subconsciously. Then, Kusanagi Sojiro put his palm on his face and took off the mask on his face, revealing a pretty face and violet eyes. Ichiro, long time no see. Kusanagi Sojiro seemed to have reunited with a friend who had not seen him for many years, and his tone revealed an unconcealable joy. When he really confirmed that the person in front of him was Kusanagi Sojiro, Hitsuge Ichiro's eyes flashed with excitement and disbelief at the same time, and he spoke. How could it be? You had already, and I saw it with my own eyes. All this is thanks to the king's seal. After my death, my soul accidentally touched the light of the king's seal, which allowed me to be directly teleported to Hutomundo and resurrected. At this point, Kusanagi Sojiro's tone revealed emotion. It's been such a long time, I finally came back here again, and finally came back to see you again. Then, Kusanagi Sojiro stretched out his hand to Hitsuge Ichiro, as if he was making some important invitation, and said, Ichiro, we can finally fight side by side again. Come on, let's return the damage and sorrow that Seireitei has given us tenfold, 100-fold. However, it was Hitsuge Ichiro who pulled out the Horimaru in response to Kusanagi Sojiro, and said in a deep voice. Sojiro, stop, don't destroy Seireitei anymore. What did you say? Kusanagi Sojiro's face immediately became completely gloomy, and he shouted. Ichiro, have you forgotten how important we were to each other? Under the pressure of the central 46th chamber, we had to draw our swords against each other. Even though I died under your sword, I have no hatred towards you at all. Now, you are drawing your sword against me to protect the Seireitei, which still does not fully trust you. These questions pointed directly to the depths of Hitsuge Ichiro's heart, causing an unparalleled struggle to flash through his eyes. What happened back then was undoubtedly an insurmountable scar in Hitsuge Ichiro's heart. Otherwise, after realizing the identity of Kusanagi Sojiro, Hitsuge Ichiro would not hesitate to abandon his identity as the captain of the 10th Division and pursue Kusanagi Sojiro's trail all the way. No, Sojiro, if you stop now, everything will still be in time. Hitsuge Ichiro gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice. Hand over the royal seal and stop attacking the Seireitei. Impossible. Kusanagi Sojiro shouted with madness and anger on his face. You should be the one who wakes up, Ichiro. You must be full of resentment towards the Seireitei in your heart, a place full of decay, ruin and injustice. Besides, do you think you still have a chance to turn back? In the eyes of the 13th Gotti Squad, you're undoubtedly a traitor. Come on, Ichiro, let's fight side by side as we did in the past, and you'll personally release the royal seal and completely destroy the entire Seireitei. However, compared with Kusanagi Sojiro's madness and anger, Hitsuge Ichiro's eyes were calm and cold. A gust of wind blew between the two, rolling up Hitsuge Ichiro's captain's Adori and Kusanagi Sojiro's tattered cloak. At this moment, Kusanagi Sojiro gradually realized something. His own time has always stayed at the moment of death. Hitsuge Ichiro stepped on his own corpse and served as the captain of the 13th Gotti Squad in the name of genius, shouldering a responsibility that he believed was more important than the friendship, dissatisfaction and hatred in the past. Ha 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 ha. Kusanagi Sojiro laughed wildly. His laughter was angry, sad and desperate. He was once abandoned by his belief in the Seireitei, and now he was betrayed by his best friend Hitsuge Ichiro. At this moment, a gate opened directly on the Hill of the Two Killings. The figure of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni stepped out of it, followed by the captains, vice-captains and a large number of elite Shinigami who returned from Kurakura town. When a large number of hollows appeared on the Hill of the Two Killings, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni and other Shinigami were already on their way back to the Seireitei. With the skills of Mayuri Kurasuchi, the captain of the 12th Division, he opened a temporary gate for Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni to the Double Killing Hill. As the huge captain-level spiritual pressure surrounded the vice-generals Kusanagi Sojiro and Hitsuge Ichiro at the Double Killing Hill, Kusanagi Sojiro's laughter never stopped, and he was not frightened by the appearance of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni and others. Bang! Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni knocked his cane heavily on the Double Killing Hill, and stared at Kusanagi Sojiro and Hitsuge Ichiro with his slightly opened eyes, and shouted majestically. Sinner, your conspiracy ends here. At the same time, on the battlefield below, Zaraka Kinpachi's huge golden spiritual pressure rose to the sky, almost sweeping away everything and slashing 2 arances in a row, crushing a large number of hollows along the way and rushing straight to the Double Killing Hill. Wind Death. Head-hanging Hisajishu used the Wind Death chain in his hand to lock the necks of the Windhawk Aransei and the Crucian King Aransei together, and spoke in a calm and cold tone. The next moment, the heads of the Windhawk Aransei and the Crucian King Aransei flew off their bodies. Hisajishu used his Shikai to kill 2 Chika's Aranseis in a row. And with a large number of vice-captains and chief officers returning from the human world, they quickly stabilized the situation of each squad and blocked the hollows led by Chika's-level Aranseis. For a while, although those hollows caused considerable casualties to the Gotti 13, the situation had undoubtedly fallen back into the hands of the Gotti 13. However, Kusanagi Sojiro's laughter stopped abruptly, and his eyes reflected the captains he had admired when he was in the Shinem Spiritual Academy, and he asked back. Is this the end? No. Kusanagi Sojiro suddenly pulled out the Horinmara from his waist and said loudly. True despair has only just begun. Suddenly, realizing something, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni opened his eyes and shouted angrily. Stop him. Almost as soon as Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni finished speaking, the fastest Seireitei turned into a shadow and flew towards Kusanagi Sojiro. Hitsuge Ichiro, who was closest to Kusanagi Sojiro, also released his zanpakutō and slashed towards Kusanagi Sojiro. Chapter 538. Onion's Rampage, Part 3. Sitting on the frost sky. Horinmara. For a moment, in the eyes of many captains full of surprise, Kusanagi Sojiro and Hitsuge Ichiro chanted the exact same liberation words, and the identical zanpakutō in their hands underwent the same changes. A blue ice dragon, a purple ice dragon, biting each other. However, what the captains did not expect was that although both were Horinmara Shikai, the blue ice dragon released by Hitsuge Ichiro was instantly bitten to pieces by the purple ice dragon. Ichiro. Do you understand? I'm the real master of Horinmara. Kusanagi Sojiro roared as if venting his anger, and the Horinmara in his hand suddenly fell on the king's seal in his hand. In an instant, a terrifying storm and frost erupted with Kusanagi Sojiro was the center, completely covering Kusanagi Sojiro, and Hitsuge Ichiro and Seireitei who were close to him were instantly blown away. When the storm subsided, Kusanagi Sojiro's appearance had changed dramatically. Rather than being a death god, he had transformed into a completely ferocious purple ice dragon. The light of the king's seal could be vaguely seen on his forehead, and his entire huge body exuded a terrifying spiritual pressure. The next moment, behind Kusanagi Sojiro, a huge golden spiritual pressure suddenly erupted. Kinpachi Zaraki's burly and oppressive body appeared from below above Kusanagi Sojiro's head, with his zanpakutō raised high. Aha, you are the enemy, right? Come and fight me to your heart's content. Almost as soon as Kinpachi Zaraki's excited voice sounded, Kinpachi Zaraki suddenly slashed at Kusanagi Sojiro in front of him. But, snap! Kusanagi Sojiro easily grabbed Kinpachi Zaraki's zanpakutō with his backhand, and swung his thick dragon tail towards Kinpachi Zaraki. Boom! The dragon's tail collided with Kinpachi Zaraki's body, and a huge ice crystal suddenly appeared. Kinpachi Zaraki quickly entered a frozen state, and the whole person fell towards the bottom of the double-killing hill like a cannonball. This scene also made many captains' eyes condense. Kinpachi Zaraki's combat power is undoubtedly quite amazing, but he was defeated by Kusanagi Sojiro, who seemed to have used the king's seal. Then, Kusanagi Sojiro, who turned into a huge ice dragon, turned his violet eyes and fell on Hitsuge Shiryu, who was full of surprise. The wings behind him flapped slowly, and his body rose into the air, and he spoke. Shiryu, even without you, I can still destroy the Seireitei. Then, Kusanagi Sojiro's whole person seemed to be a real ice dragon. As the ice wings behind him flapped, he rushed to the top of the Palace of Confession, which was the center and the highest point of the Seireitei, with yin and yang. As Kusanagi Sojiro landed on it, the entire Confession Palace was quickly frozen from top to bottom, and the surrounding buildings, land, etc. seemed to be attracted by Kusanagi Sojiro, and moved towards the sky above the Seireitei with Kusanagi Sojiro as the center. In less than a few breaths, under the gaze of countless Shinigami, a nice building similar to the castle in the sky suddenly appeared in the sky above the center of the Seireitei. What kind of power is this? Komamura Sajin said in shock. The king's seal. This is the power of the king's seal, the power of the Soul King. Yukita Jushiro's weak voice appeared behind that crowd, and he came over with the support of Kotetsukin and Kotsubaki Sentaro, saying, the king's seal represents the ability to use the power of the Soul King to a certain extent. It is for this reason that a building similar to the Soul King Palace is being constructed with the king's seal as the center. As soon as these words came out, many Shinigami who knew only a little about the power of the king's seal were undoubtedly shocked. At this time, a black curtain began to open in the floating ice building, and began to include the Seireitei. What is that? Komamura Sajin asked. It belongs to the spiritual pressure coverage range limited by the king's seal, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni said in a heavy tone. The king's seal is defining the spiritual pressure coverage range. In other words, within the black curtain, the sinner will have a power close to that of God. Once the black curtain completely covers the entire Seireitei, it only takes a thought, and the entire Seireitei will be destroyed in an instant. The Death Gods. Until this moment, the Death Gods really realized how troublesome and serious the harm caused by the king's seal was. Although the opening speed of the black curtain was not fast, as long as the God 13 wanted, there was enough time to get out of it before the black curtain completely covered the Seireitei. Moreover, it seemed that after the floating ice building was formed, Kusanagi Sojiro also seemed to have a deep connection with it, and he could not take the initiative to get out of the floating ice building. But as a member of the 13th Gotti squad, how could they abandon the Seireitei and run away? No. At this moment, Mayuri Kurosachi appeared belatedly on the Double Death Hill and said, things are not as serious as you thought. I hacked into the database of the Great Spiritual Book Corridor and found that the complete release of the King's Seal requires Bankai to barely bear it. And the man named Kusama Sojiro has a captain-level spiritual pressure, but his zanpakutō does not seem to have the ability of Bankai. Therefore, this cannot be regarded as the complete release of the King's Seal, it can only be regarded as the rampage of the King's Seal. Ryukaya Kachiki asked. Is there any difference? The difference is huge. Mayuri Kurosachi said with a strange smile. When fully liberated, Kusanagi Sojiro will possess power truly equivalent to that of a god within a certain range, and can easily control time, space, and even dimensions with a single thought. However, the runaway of the King's Seal is only a passive release of power. Kusanagi Sojiro's control over the King's Seal is quite limited, and he can only perform some simple manipulations. In other words, as long as you break into the Black Curtain and forcibly defeat Kusanagi Sojiro before the power of the King's Seal completely covers the Seireitei, then you can stop the runaway of the King's Seal. As Kuro Shichimeguri finished speaking, Hitsuge Toshiro took the initiative to speak. Captain, please leave this matter to me. I will definitely stop Kusanagi Sojiro from going further down the wrong path. Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni looked at the Black Curtain that was already expanding rapidly from afar. Although the speed of the Black Curtain's opening was not terrible, if the Black Curtain was allowed to open rapidly without any care, I'm afraid that the other captains would not even have enough time to break into the floating ice building under the constant interference of the power of the King's Seal. When the Black Curtain expanded to a certain range, even if it did not completely cover the Seireitei, Kusanagi Sojiro only destroyed half of the Seireitei, which was difficult for Yamamoto Shibukuni to accept. Chapter 539 Loyalty. Although Kurosaki Mairi judged that Kusanagi Sojiro's condition was just the rampage of the King's Seal, Kusanagi Sojiro's control over the King's Seal was limited, and there was a chance that Kusanagi Sojiro would break into the dark and defeat Kusanagi Sojiro to resolve the crisis. However, all of this was just the result obtained by Kurosaki Mairi through calculations. The safety of Seireitei cannot be completely entrusted to the calculation results. Yamamoto Shibukuni's face sank, and the Raijin hidden in the cane gradually emerged, and he spoke. Preventing the expansion of the dark is the first priority, and suppress the damage to Seireitei to the minimum extent possible. Captain Komamura and Captain Kurosaki Mairi will release their Bankai and work with me to restrict it. As for the task of stopping Kusanagi Sojiro, Captain Seireitei, Captain Kachika, and Captain Hitsuge, this matter is left to you. I will buy enough time for you. At the end of his words, Yamamoto Shibukuni glanced at Kikushansui and Jikitijashiro, and a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Kikushansui opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. After all, he had been hit by Kurosaki Makoto's 2 blows, and his head was still a mess. He was also several times slower as if he had been disturbed, and even needed his Nano's support to walk. Not to mention being put into the task of stopping the expansion of the Black Curtain or defeating Kusanagi Sojiro was a fighting force. Bankai. Golden Hija Shojitsu. Bankai. Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mu. As Kurosaki Mairi and Komamura Sajin arrived at the predetermined direction, 2 huge monsters suddenly appeared in the Seireitei, and slammed against the Black Curtain that was expanding at an ever-increasing speed. Boom boom. The so-called Black Curtain was essentially the materialized spiritual pressure released by the King's Seal. When it collided with the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mu and Golden Hija Shojitsu, it almost made a roaring sound as if it was materialized, and the expansion speed of the Black Curtain was slowed down. However, the speed of the Black Curtain only slowed down slightly, but it continued to push the Black Road Heaven Punishment Mu and the Golden Hit Killing Jutsu back continuously. Everything will be reduced to ashes, Raijinjika. The next moment, a raging flame shot up from the double killing hill, and then madly rolled towards the entire Black Curtain, covering almost half of the Black Curtain with a layer of flames. For a moment, the expansion speed of the Black Curtain slowed down at a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. Although it was still slowly expanding, the speed was already slow enough to be almost the same as that of an ordinary person walking. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Seireitei, Hitsuge and Kachika rushed into the Black Curtain. At this moment, inside the Black Curtain, there were not only Seireitei, Hitsuge and Kachika, but also a large number of Shinigami and Hollows who were drawn into it as the Black Curtain expanded. The battle between Shinigami and Hollows has been going on. More importantly, it seems that under the control of the power of the King's Seal, this space seems to be connected to the Great Hollow Forest of Hukomundo. A large number of Jillians and ordinary Hollows appear out of thin air, blocking the Shinigami from heading to the floating ice city. Bankai. Thousand Sakura Kidya. In this situation, Kachika chose to perform Bankai without hesitation. The overwhelming cherry blossoms swept away like a torrent, drowning and killing one Hollow after another. Kachika's move also shocked the morale of a large number of Shinigami who were involved in the conspiracy, and then they kept moving towards Kachika. Kachika glanced and found that in addition to his vice-captain Aburo Rinji, the main vice-captains or chair officers include Hisaji Shuei, Hinamura Mamo, Kira Ijiru, Matsumoto Rangiku, etc. And there are about 1,000 ordinary team members. However, when Byakuya Kachiki saw that he had cleared an area, hollows kept appearing out of thin air, and his face could not help but slightly darken. The number of hollows is still increasing. Everyone, assist with all your strength and make a quick decision. The Shinigami, who realized the change in the situation, with Soifong, Byakuya Kachiki and Hitsuge Yatsuru as the center, continued to break through forward. Among them, what caught Byakuya Kachiki's attention was that Seireitei, who had been extremely low-key in the past, had burst out with a much stronger fighting power than Seireitei, who had already mastered Bankai. Wherever Seireitei passed, it was almost completely a perfect harvest of killing weapons, and countless hollows limbs kept falling to the ground. Very good. After this is over, you can apply to the Captain General for the position of Captain. Byakuya Kachiki said to Seireitei in a calm tone. Seireitei did not speak, but instead he sped up a lot and rushed to the front. The Keizeshi in his hand was like a sickle weasel that was madly cutting around Seireitei, tearing up everything that came close. Kachiki Byakuya, who always behaved very arrogantly and coldly to the outside world, showed considerable patience towards Seireitei and spoke again. Don't worry about being rejected. You are the child that Makoto-kun brought back from Rukongai. It will be easy for more than 3 captains to recognize you. Until this time, Seireitei was silent for a while before answering. I have never killed any enemy for that lord, so how can I enjoy the blessing of that lord? Kachiki Byakuya was slightly stunned when he heard this. Then, Kachiki Byakuya seemed to understand why Seireitei had been so low-key for decades, and even almost cut off most of his personal relationships with others. Makoto-kun, you are worthy at being the child you favored back then. You are so loyal and righteous, no less than Captain Komamura. For a moment, Kachiki Byakuya looked at Seireitei with full admiration, and then subconsciously compared him with his vice-captain Seireitei. A feeling of disdain cannot help but arise. Seireitei is calm and low-key, loyal, and values feelings over fame and fortune. As for Seireitei, not to mention that he is impulsive and often gets carried away by his passion and doesn't know what is right, what's more important is that as his vice-captain, his eyes are always staring at his sister. You bastard! Thinking of this, Kachiki Byakuya couldn't help but glance in the direction of Seireitei, and Seireitei, who was racing his Bankai, Baboon's King Snapetail Mara and rushing to clear the way, shuddered inexplicably. Suddenly, Seireitei felt that the other side of his body seemed to suddenly light up, and as his eyes turned, a terrifying red flash swept across, as if to completely submerge Seireitei. Chapter 540. The target had broken B. At this moment, Seireitei's Bankai, Baboon's King Snapetail Ball, was rushing forward to clear the way, and he had no time to retract it to protect himself like a shield. Just as the flash was about to hit Seireitei, a large piece of cherry blossoms blocked Seireitei's way. Boom! Between the collision between Senbon Bancho and the flash, countless cherry blossom petals were constantly annihilated and replenished, steadily blocking the flash. Seeing this, Seireitei's originally tense heart gradually relaxed. However, Kachiki Byakuya's noble figure appeared beside Seireitei, and taught him a lesson with a somewhat stern and dissatisfied tone. Seireitei, you must always remain absolutely vigilant and focused on the battlefield. Do you need me to remind you of such common sense? Yes, I'm sorry, Seireitei replied in awe. We'll talk about the apology later, after we've dealt with the enemy in front of us. Almost as soon as Byakuya Kachiki finished speaking, Soifong, Hitsuge Yatsuru, and Seireitei also appeared beside Byakuya Kachiki, all looking forward. It was only at this moment that Seireitei looked in the direction that Byakuya Kachiki was looking at, and his face couldn't help but look a little ugly. 6 Seireitei. In addition to the 4 Seireitei that Kinpachi Zaraki and Seireitei had killed before, the remaining 6 Seireitei that attacked the Seireitei were all here. More importantly, the form of the 6 Seireitei was very wrong. They were not released from their original form, but were distorted to the point that they looked like humanoids after being transformed into Seireitei, and completely transformed into beasts. However, the spiritual pressure emitted by the Seireitei was much more terrifying than before. This spiritual pressure, aren't these guys all top-level Great Hydra's toads? Seireitei couldn't help but say a cold joke. I'm afraid the power of the royal seal has affected them. Is this evolution? Or mutation? Kachiki Byakuya's tone also became more uncertain. I only know that I'm afraid there will be trouble. There are 6 Seireitei close to the level of Vast Old, and we currently have only 5 Shinigami who have mastered Bankai. Soifong pointed out the biggest problem at the moment in a heavy tone, which made the Shinigami present all look depressed. Although it is often said that the gap between captains is often like a natural chasm, the gap between captains and non-captains is even more dimensional. Just when the atmosphere was quite heavy, Hizajishime spoke in a calm tone. I will contain the two, and you break through to the floating ice city as soon as possible. No. Almost immediately, Kachika Byakuya, Soyoifong and Hitsugaya Toshiro all opposed this proposal. At present, the spiritual pressure of these Aranses in their strange state is approaching vast old. Except for Shinigami of the level of the captain, no one who fights two alone will have a chance of winning. More importantly, Kachika Byakuya passed the 6 Aranses blocking the way and looked towards the floating ice city. Inside the floating ice city, in addition to Kusanagi Sojiro who seemed to have transformed into a giant ice dragon and merged with the king's seal, there were also that 2 female Aranses named Yin and Yang, who seemed to be integrated into the floating ice city to form 2 giant turrets. Although Kachika Byakuya was now responsible for defeating Kusanagi Sojiro and protecting the Seireitei, his irrationality was now clear that with the current combined combat power, there was probably no chance to overcome the obstacles and defeat Kusanagi Sojiro. The 6 Aranses did not give Kachika Byakuya and the others time to think. They suddenly pounced on Kachika Byakuya and the others in the form of wild beasts. Boom! A melee broke out. Everyone distanced themselves from each other and avoided interfering with each other and fighting with the attacking Aranses. Among them, Hizajishime, who clearly already possessed the spiritual pressure of the captain level, still fought with his shy guy, and the weakest Abirinji was instantly at a disadvantage. While Kachika Byakuya and Hitsugaya Toshiro each dealt with an Aranse, 2 Aranses were constantly chasing Soyoifong from the left and right. This scene made Kachika Byakuya's face change, and he shouted. Captain Soyoifong, be careful, Kusanagi Sojiro may know your Bankai ability, and their target is you. This statement undoubtedly made Soyoifong's expression solemn. In fact, when Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni specially sent Soyoifong into the battle, his intention was already quite obvious. If Hitsugaya Toshiro cannot stop Kusanagi Sojiro in the conventional way, then Soyoifong's Bankai, Sparrow V Thunder Whip, will undoubtedly be the last trump card, forcibly wiping out Kusanagi Sojiro and the entire floating ice city in this Seireitei. However, the Aranses that appeared purposefully restrained the other captains, and then the 2 fastest Aranses directly launched a pincer attack on Soyoifong, which undoubtedly showed that these Aranses were controlled by Kusanagi Sojiro. Damn it. After Soyoifong realized that she had become Kusanagi Sojiro's target, she burst out with instant steps without reservation, turning Soyoifong's figure into an after-image that was almost indistinguishable. However, the 2 Aranses that were sent to attack Soyoifong seemed to have also been strengthened or mutated in speed, and the speed they showed was so fast that Soyoifong had no way to distance herself. In addition, a large number of densely packed hollow bullets fell towards Soyoifong like a violent storm, constantly affecting Soyoifong's speed. For a moment, Soyoifong felt like she was trapped in a quagmire, facing the siege of 2 Aranses and being entangled. Then, Soyoifong glanced in the direction of Byakuya Kachika and others, and found that the Aranse they needed to deal with seemed to restrain their abilities to a certain extent, and they were afraid that they would not be able to deal with the enemy in a short time. As for the other vice-captains, chief officers, and the like, they could only ensure that they would constantly eliminate the Jillians and ordinary hollows that appeared around them, so as not to put the captains in a situation of being besieged. They were of no help at all. No, we can't delay like this any longer. We should try to kill one with the ability of 2-hit kill, just as Soyoifong paused for a moment and prepared to turn around and fight back. Boom. A huge roar suddenly sounded in the direction of the floating ice city. Soyoifong turned her head and saw that the turret incarnated by Yang released a red flame attack that was no less than the hollow flash of Vastod, rolling towards her. Dodge! Subconsciously, Soyoifong wanted to dodge this attack with a flash step, but the 2 Aranses blocked Soyoifong's way from the left and right, as if they were going to die together with Soyoifong under that attack. In an instant, Soyoifong's heart completely sank, and her whole body was reflected red in the red flames that were about to drown her. P.S. I wish you all a happy May Day holiday. Citric Acid. Chapter 541 Spirit Film Boom. The extremely hot flames fell heavily like a meteor, completely submerging Soyoifong in the shocked and ugly eyes of the other Shinigami, causing a huge storm to sweep around. Damn it. Captain Soyoifong. Hitsugaya Toshiro couldn't help but shout loudly. Kachika Byakuya frowned, his face was ugly. The power of that attack was not inferior to the Vash top level hollow's Vash top level hollow. Even if the captain-level Shinigami took this attack head-on, it would definitely be dead or injured. Just when many Shinigami were anxious about Seireitei's condition, the diffuse smoke quickly dissipated. In the smoke, a substantial bowl-shaped spirit particle membrane appeared, which protected Seireitei, who was unharmed, in an inverted manner. Witnessing this scene, Seireitei said with a somewhat surprised expression, "What is this?" As for Seireitei, who was protected in the bowl-shaped spirit particle membrane, she seemed to realize something and turned her head to look in the distance behind her. On the ruins of a collapsed team house, Senju Cheng, wearing a white windbreaker, stood on it, raised his hand and pointed in the direction of Seireitei, with a black cat lying on his shoulder. Kurosaki Ichigo, carrying Zanjutsu on his back, stood slightly sideways behind Senju Cheng on the right side, while Seireitei held the reed sobo in his hand and half-knelt behind Senju Cheng on the left side. As for the three uninvited guests who had just appeared, the ordinary hollows around almost swarmed towards Senju Cheng and others. Bankai. Tensu Zanjutsu. Crescent Moon Sky Strike. Seeing this, Kurosaki Ichigo did not hesitate to perform Bankai on this level of battlefield, and the Dark Crescent swept out, almost instantly cutting hundreds of ordinary hollows in half and evaporating them. As Seireitei pulled the reed sobo in his hand, countless reed sobo arrows swept across like a violent storm, sweeping the battlefield on the other side like mowing the grass. Then, with his hands in his pockets, Makoto Senju stepped slightly, and the spirit particles gathered under his feet. He arrived in front of Seireitei in an instant with a flying lean kick, and asked with a smile on his face, "Just in time, you were not injured?" After saying this, Seireitei's eyes flashed with gratitude, and she crossed her hands on her chest, and spoke with a cold tone that kept people away from her. "You actually saved me. Don't forget that not long ago, we were still enemies." Hearing this, Makoto Senju couldn't help but flash a touch of nostalgia between his eyebrows. Seireitei, as expected, is still such a proud character. Obviously, she wanted to remind both sides of their positions and let Makoto Senju be careful that the gains would not outweigh the losses, but her words seemed to say that Makoto Senju was meddling in other people's business. "There's no way, I can't just ignore Captain Seireitei." Makoto Senju paused after almost speaking out his true feelings, and then continued to speak. "You also completely disregard the safety of the Seireitei, right? In any case, once the Seireitei is completely destroyed, I'm afraid that the world will also fall into a long-term chaos of being invaded by the Hollows. Anyway, it's not that I won't be grateful." Seireitei snorted coldly, and then noticed the black cat lying on Senju Makoto's shoulder, and spoke. "HMPH, the two most annoying people are together. Shigu and Yorishi, you only know to go back to Soul Society to help now." "No." The black cat Yorishi licked her paws, and although she was lying on Senju Makoto's shoulder, she felt lazy and comfortable, and answered. "With Kurosaki Makoto here, I have no intention of taking action. He can handle it alone." However, this sentence undoubtedly sounded like a provocation to Seireitei, who was proud in her heart. For Seireitei, since the former adult disappeared from her world, she would never rely on anyone again. "Even without you, I can still deal with Kusanagi Sojiro," Seireitei said. "Little Broken Bee is getting cuter and cuter." Kuronko squinted lazily, a human smile appeared on his face, and he said. "Before saying that, why don't you try to break that layer of spirit particle membrane first? Do you think I can't do it?" Broken Bee's face was full of anger, and the sparrow bee on her finger suddenly poked at the spirit particle membrane in front of her. With a crisp sound, the spirit particle membrane was intact, but Broken Bee's middle finger was shocked and hurt. "Ahaha," Kuronko laughed and said. "This is a hardness that can block the hardness comparable to Vostok's Void Flash. How can the explosive power of just one finger break this layer of spirit particle membrane? Otherwise, let Kurosaki Makoto help you break this layer of spirit particle membrane and let you out." It must be said that as the boss that Broken Bee once admired, Kuronko knew perfectly how to arouse Broken Bee's emotions. For a moment, Seireitei, who had originally looked arrogant and cold, now had a face full of red, almost writing the words disobedience and anger. However, Seireitei's zanpakutō had limited destructive power in the state of Shinigami, and as for Bankai, just when Seireitei couldn't help but use the very burdensome Shunhong to try to force a breakthrough, Senju Makoto's finger gently touched the spirit film and released Seireitei from it. This scene made Seireitei's face even redder, as if she was broken through and humiliated by Senju Makoto in front of Kuronko Yorishi. The psychological defense line was broken. The self-esteem was humiliated. You bastard, give me back the spirit film," Seireitei said with gritted teeth. Senju Cheng looked at the bickering between Kuronko Yorishi and Seireitei with a bit of laughter and tears. Obviously, the relationship between Kuronko Yorishi and Seireitei was so pure and had a little impure yearning. Why do they look like enemies now? Could it be that some third person has had an impact? Urahara Kisuke. It must be him. In this moment, the two severely injured Aranseis that were originally affected by the attack released by Yang seemed to have the ability of high-speed regeneration again due to the changes caused by the power of the King's Seal. The next moment, just as Senju Cheng was about to speak to Seireitei, the two Aranseis suddenly attacked Senju Cheng from the left and right. Seeing this, Seireitei was about to move to block the attack for Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng's hand was placed on Seireitei's slender shoulder at some point, stopping Seireitei from moving, and said, "Captain Seireitei, it is very dangerous to show off one's ability alone. If necessary, you must remember to work as a team." As Senju Cheng's voice fell, the distance between the two Aranseis, which seemed to have changed in appearance, and Senju Cheng was already within a certain distance, and even faintly touched Senju Cheng's windbreaker. Seireitei's eyes widened, and she subconsciously shouted nervously. "Idiot." Chapter 542. Freedom soon. In the blink of an eye, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida appeared behind Makoto Senju at the same time. Crescent moon, sky strike. A corner of the hollow mask condensed faintly on Ichigo Kurosaki's forehead, making the edge of the pitch-black slash that soared into the sky seem to have a conspicuous blood-red color, instantly cutting the Aransei on the right in half. And Ryoshida's figure expanded rapidly, his white shirt burst, revealing his terrifying steel muscles, and his black overalls were extremely tight. Muscle Dragon formed the next moment. The Aransei on the left, who looked like a beast, fell into Ryoshida's arms like a free fall, and his head was clamped by Ryoshida's armpits. "You are doomed, and you will be free soon." In the terrified eyes of the Aransei, Ryoshida suddenly pinched his armpits, and then pressed the body of the Aransei to sit on the ground. Crack! There was a dense sound of bones breaking. When Ishirai stretched out his hand to lift the Aransei from his arms, the Aransei seemed to be completely broken and soft, with no hard parts on its body. This brutal scene made Kurosaki Ichigo, who was standing beside Ishirai, swallow his saliva. He subconsciously moved a few steps away from Ishirai in the opposite direction, as if he was afraid that he would be pinched by Ishirai, who seemed to have a more terrifying physique. As for Seireitei, who was already petite and slender, she was frightened and shuddered. So, Captain Seireitei can try to trust his companions occasionally and leave your back to them, instead of thinking about solving everything by yourself. Senju Cheng preached in a gentle tone. Seireitei was slightly startled, snorted coldly, shook off the palm of Senju Cheng's hand on her shoulder, and ran straight to the floating ice city, which was not far away. "I really can't explain it clearly. I don't understand teamwork at all," Senju Cheng said helplessly. Obviously, in Senju Cheng's past memories, when he used to talk to Seireitei in his true face, the Tsunda Seireitei was very obedient. Now, he has saved Seireitei several times, but it seems that he has not listened to the words of such a kind benefactor. The Black Cat Yorishi, who was lying on Senju Cheng's shoulder, heard this and complained. "Where is your teamwork? It's just that you are lazy and don't want to take action. You chose to leave this level of enemy to Ichigo and Rai. Proper training for the younger generation is not only gentleness and care, but also the most perfect teamwork." As Senju Cheng said this, he hugged the Black Cat Yorishi from his shoulder to his arms, completely ignoring the fact that there were acquaintances of the Black Cat Yorishi everywhere, and directly stroked it. Instantly, the huge sense of stimulation and shame made Kuronko Yorishi's tail stand up on the spot, but his body was so limp that he seemed to have no strength at all. Asshole, stop it, at least play in a proper manner." In response, Senju Cheng seemed to be oblivious and continued to teach Kuronko Yorishi what it means to be well-behaved and sensible, and not to interrupt casually, while his eyes were looking at the battle between Kuchika Byakuya and others on the other side. "Uncle Kurosaki, should we help Byakuya and others solve the enemy first?" Kurosaki Ichigo asked hesitantly. The crisis caused by the King's Seal was explained quite clearly to Senju Cheng and others by Urahara Kisuke. It was for this reason that Senju Cheng asked Chidori Yasutara, Synopsis and Neomu to deal with the follow-up issues related to the execution organization, and he quickly took Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai to the Seireitei. After all, on the surface, the Seireitei belongs to the nobles and the 13th Division of the Gotti, but in reality it belongs to the 0th Division and Ichiba the Hyoshogu. But in the final analysis, in the eyes of Makoto Senju, the future may belong to him. So, how could Makoto Senju tolerate Kusanagi Sojiro destroying his Seireitei? Moreover, if the crisis caused by the King's Seal really forced the 0th Division to show up, it would disrupt the plan that Makoto Senju had been preparing for. However, if Ichigo Kurosaki and others intervened to support the battlefield on the side of Byakuya Kachika, there is no doubt that the balance of the situation would tilt instantly, and the power of a large force would be gathered to attack the floating ice city to deal with Kusanagi Sojiro. There is no time to waste, and their zanpakutō abilities may not have much effect on Kusanagi Sojiro. These enemies can be left to Captain Kachika and the others to deal with. Follow Captain Soifong to confirm the status of Kusanagi Sojiro first. Makoto Senju said, then hugged the black cat Yorishi and turned into a residual shadow and quickly followed in the direction of Soifong. However, in the end, Senju Makoto looked at Hisagishui from a distance. You have grown up, Shui, but why don't you use Bankai? If you use Bankai, you can hold all the Aranseis by yourself, right? Or is there no one here that you can fully trust? And Hisagishui seemed to have sensed something, and his eyes instinctively looked in the direction where Senju Makoto left. The feeling of that sight was somewhat familiar. Then, Hisagishui frowned, and the wind death in his hand spun and cut wildly again, blocking the Aransei in front of him who was madly releasing the hollow flash. When Hisagishui completely accepted the power of the wind death, and followed the belief of wanting to become the perfect weapon in the hands of that adult, the wind death could almost exert a terrifying power in close combat. However, this Aransei, which seemed to have been specially transformed by the power of the King's Seal, seemed to have strengthened the ability to release hollow flash and hollow bullet, and kept bombarding Hisagishui from a distance. Are you trying to stop me? The answer I want may be hidden in that floating ice castle. I have to confirm that no matter what. Hisagishui's eyes condensed, staring at the Aransei who kept a distance from him at all times. As for the situation of Kachika Byakuya and Hitsuge Iyashiro, it was similar to Hisagishui's. Their zanpakutō abilities were restrained invisibly, and the Aransei after the transformation had the ability of high-speed regeneration, which made it difficult for Kachika Byakuya and others to resolve the battle in a short time. As for Arai Rinji, his Bankai was simply really weak, with a lack of attack means. The slow-moving baboon's king Snape-tail Mara exposed considerable deficiencies both in defense and attack. This also made Arai Rinji firmly suppressed by the Aransei, and he could only barely remain undefeated. As for victory, it seemed impossible. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 543 The Disappearing Other. Boom boom. When Senju Makoto led Kurosaki, Ichigo and Ishidarai to approach the floating ice city, they saw the two Aranseis, Yin and Yang, which were completely integrated with the floating ice city and turned into turrets, and were frantically attacking Soifong who had entered first. It seemed that Kusanagi Sojiro was quite clear about the power of Soifong's Bankai, Sparrowy Thunder Whip, so Soifong suffered a saturation covering attack. The sky was full of flames and lightning, as well as a large number of virtual flashes and virtual bullets, which were released frantically from the two turrets. For a while, even with Soifong's speed, there was no room for advancement, and they could only dodge awkwardly all the way. Then, Senju Makoto snapped his fingers in the direction of Soifong, and a large number of spirit particles were forcibly absorbed, blocking the saturation attacks that swarmed in on Soifong from the left and right. This method, which almost exceeded the theoretical upper limit of spirit particle absorption mastered by the Queen Sea, made Kuronko Yorishi look sideways. However, after Aizen Sosok stood up for Makoto Senju in a sense and characterized the leapfrog growth of Makoto Senju's power as the influence of the Shinigami. Nowadays, Makoto Senju often chooses not to pretend, and does whatever is convenient. As for what is beyond the theoretical upper limit of the Queen Sea, it has nothing to do with Makoto Senju, a pure-blooded Queen Sea, and it is completely the influence of the Shinigami. Is this reasonable? This is very reasonable. After Makoto Senju made his move, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida also tacitly went to the yin and yang positions on the left and right respectively. Boom. Sensing the crisis caused by Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita's rapid approach, some attacks were deflected and came towards Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita. However, the abnormal evolution of yin and yang can always allow them, who were originally quite ordinary, to gain destructive power far beyond that of ordinary Vastold. However, this also made the yin and yang unable to move on their own. Without other Aranses or hollows to cover and delay them, they themselves became a sitting duck. Soon, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita broke through the massive amount of attacks and approached the yin and yang at a certain distance. Crescent Moon, Sky Strike. Iron Mountain Rescue. In an instant, almost with a secretly comparing mentality, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita attacked the yin and yang almost at the same time, and destroyed the two Arensei turrets that seemed to be pouring endless firepower. However, just when Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita were about to turn back and join Senju Cheng, the two completely destroyed turrets actually seemed to be restored from nothing. Be careful. With Senju Cheng's reminder, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita narrowly avoided the sudden hollow flash that attacked again. Then, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita continued to try to destroy the turrets, however, it was useless. The turrets incarnated by yin and yang seemed to be integrated with the entire floating ice city. No matter how they destroyed the turrets, they could quickly recover in a way similar to super speed regeneration. In desperation, Makoto Senju could only leave Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshita to continue to destroy yin and yang, while he quickly went to the top of the floating ice city. After restricting yin and yang, the entire floating ice city seemed to have no other defense lines, until Makoto Senju took Shattered Bee to the top of the floating ice city, which seemed to be made entirely of ice. A giant ice dragon was lying here, exuding an extremely cold breath, like a fantasy creature that should not exist in reality. The king's seal was constantly emitting light on the forehead of this giant ice dragon. Kusanagi Sojiro. Makoto Senju said. Kusanagi Sojiro also slowly opened his violet eyes, slowly turned to the direction of Senju Makoto, and made a sound. Kurosaki Makoto, did that guy's plan fail? He actually made you unite with the Seireitei again. That guy. Senju Makoto narrowed his eyes, and suddenly realized that he seemed to have overlooked something. But Seireitei couldn't wait to ask first. Kusanagi Sojiro. Who is the person who uses the all-seeing? Kusanagi Sojiro. Suddenly, Kusanagi Sojiro was stunned. He was such a big ice dragon standing here, and was about to use the king's seal to destroy the Seireitei. As a result, Seireitei, the captain of the 2nd Division, came up and didn't dissuade him, but asked this seemingly irrelevant question. In an instant, Kusanagi Sojiro's eyes condensed, and he felt insulted and despised. Arrogant. The ice dragon transformed by Kusanagi Sojiro opened its mouth and emitted a voice that echoed throughout the king's seal space. Sure enough, the so-called Gotti-13 is such an arrogant person. Only destruction can make you bastards feel despair. The next moment, the ice dragon transformed by Kusanagi Sojiro opened its wings, and countless ice cones came with extreme coldness like a storm. Wherever those ice cones passed, it seemed to freeze everything. The extreme low temperature seemed to have completely exceeded the limit of the Horimaru in Hitsuge Yachiro's hand. Before getting close, Seireitei already felt that her limbs were about to be frozen. Until this moment, Seireitei suddenly reacted. The power of Kusanagi Sojiro in front of her, after integrating the runaway king's seal, was absolutely beyond her imagination. Instant boom. Then, Seireitei used instant boom almost without hesitation, and a large number of densely packed material ice ghosts turned into white lightning, allowing Seireitei to regain her ability to move. She flashed and avoided the whistling torrent of ice cones, and went straight to Kusanagi Sojiro. Senju Makoto took a slight step back, and also avoided the torrent of ice cones, but his brows were slightly furrowed, as if he was thinking about something. At this point, many things have almost become completely clear. Kusanagi Sojiro, with the support of Aizen Sasuke, led a part of the Arensei to seize the royal seal and try to destroy the Seireitei. The information revealed in Kusanagi Sojiro's words just now, and the timing of the Kusukushin organization's actions, are enough to show that Kusanagi Sojiro and the person suspected to be from the Tsunoshiro family are aware of each other's actions, and it is very likely that they are in a cooperative relationship. But, where is the person? Where is the guy from the Tsunoshiro family now? His goal is exactly the same as Kusanagi Sojiro's, purely to seek revenge and destroy the Seireitei. Execution, the Fullbringer, the Tsuneshiro family, Chapter 544. The real target. Just as Seireitei and Kusanagi Sojiro are fighting, Makoto Senju realized something and suddenly turned his head to Kuronko Yorishi and spoke. Yorishi, hurry up, contact Uehara Kisuke, her. What's wrong? Kuronko Yorishi asked in confusion. Originally, I thought that the guy who assisted Kusanagi Sojiro and used the All Shows zanpakutō would be here, but if he is not here, then his target is likely not the Seireitei, but something else. Makoto Senju spoke very quickly. Various clues and intuition tell me that the guy's target is likely to be a Fullbringer. You should contact Uehara Kisuke immediately and quickly reunite with Chagasutura. No. After a pause, Makoto Senju said in a serious tone. You should also go in person, Yorishi, especially the body of Jinjoko. You must protect it. Kuronko Yorishi heard this, revealing a bit of human entanglement on his face, and asked. But, isn't it the most important thing to solve the crisis of destroying the Seireitei caused by Kusanagi Sojiro and the Royal Seal? Leave Kusanagi Sojiro to me, you hurry to the real world. Senju Makoto insisted and said in a hurried tone. The current situation made Senju Makoto extremely worried about the real world. However, the situation of Kusanagi Sojiro and the Royal Seal is unknown, and Senju Makoto can't just leave Kusanagi Sojiro and return to the real world without a care for a guess, and let the Seireitei be destroyed like this. Therefore, Yorishi, who is named Sunshine, is undoubtedly the best choice to return to the real world through the gate at the fastest speed. The Black Cat Yorishi stared into Senju Makoto's eyes, in terms of reason, in terms of position, in terms of logic. Compared with the unfounded guess, what is undoubtedly more important is the crisis that may destroy the Seireitei at any time. Even if it is guessed with malice, in this case, it is not impossible that Kurosaki Makoto, a queency, has also had the idea of seizing the Royal Seal. Therefore, Kurosaki Makoto would push Kuronko Yorishi away at this critical moment. But, there's really no way. Kuronko Yorishi stood up on Senju Makoto's shoulder and said. Since it's the master's request, as a cat, I need to obey occasionally. Then, Kuronko Yorishi turned into a barely visible after image, and disappeared from Senju Makoto's sight in an instant, heading straight for the gate preserved in the Shifunyuan courtyard. At this moment, in the present world, in the basement of Uehara General Store, Uehara Kisuke was frantically inputting and calculating something in front of a large number of screens. For pure scientists like Uehara Kisuke and Kurosaki Mayuri, many futures can be calculated. Moreover, in the large screen in front of Uehara Kisuke, what was reflected was the dark curtain spread by the King's Seal and the state of resistance by Captain General Yamamoto and others. Uehara Kisuke, on the other hand, calculated how long Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni could hold on and the probability of resolving the King's Seal crisis before then, and decided whether to contact those beings. The Seireitei must not be allowed to be destroyed. In the slightly dim environment, Uehara Kisuke's eyes were no longer inattentive and lazy as before, but were absolutely calm. At this moment, Uehara Kisuke suddenly noticed a small black shadow passing through the darkness and heading straight towards the Shibuyan courtyard. What? Isn't that Mr. Yorishi? How come she? Uehara Kisuke paused, and his brows furrowed, realizing that the situation seemed to have changed. As a member of the Shibuyan family, Shibuyan Yorishi would never ignore the crisis that threatened the Shibuyan family and run away. In other words, what happened? Uehara Kisuke stroked his chin with a lot of stubble and muttered. Then returned to the Shifunyuan courtyard. It seems that Mr. Yorishi's only goal can only be to pass through the gate. Returning to the world at this time is, suddenly, Uehara Kisuke reacted, and the whole person disappeared in an instant, running straight to the location of the Kurosaki flower shop, which was not very far away. In Naruki City, Jinjo was eliminated, and then Senju Makoto took Kurosaki Ichigo, Ishirai and Shifunyuan Yorishi to the Seireitei, leaving a large number of defeated execution members to be properly handled. Senju Makoto and others are not extremely evil people, so Senju Makoto asked Inoue, who could not adapt to the rapid journey, to stay and cooperate with Synopsis to treat the execution wounded, and then detained them all and waited for Senju Makoto to come back. Therefore, Synopsis took all the casualties of the execution organization and returned directly to the hidden underground space of the flower shop. During this process, although Uehara Kisuke was also quite curious about the Fullbringer, he was anxious about the problem of the Seireitei and the King's Seal, so he did not get involved too much. He found an excuse and returned to Uehara's grocery store alone. Damn, I was completely distracted by the king's seal and Kusanagi Sojiro. Uehara Kisuke put one hand on his hat and rushed towards the direction of the Kurosaki flower shop almost immediately. However, just when Uehara Kisuke could see the location of the Kurosaki flower shop from a distance. Boom. A huge explosion suddenly erupted from the underground of the Kurosaki flower shop, causing Uehara Kisuke's pupils to shrink. His speed increased again, and he rushed directly into the smoke of the explosion without hesitation, and then rushed directly underground. Soon, the scene in the underground space appeared in front of Uehara Kisuke. Chad Tater's arm was cut off and he fell to the ground with serious injuries. The person standing opposite Chad Tater was wearing a cloak to hide his figure. In addition to dragging Jinchokiko's body in one hand, the appearance of the zanpakutō in the other hand surprised Uehara Kisuke. Zanpakutō Benaim. This is Uehara Kisuke's zanpakutō. It was you who hid under the shadow of Kusanagi Sojiro and imitated a large number of zanpakutōs to attack Yukita Jushiro, so that the Gotti 13th Division would target Mr. Kurosaki, right? Uehara Kisuke stood in front of the figure and questioned in a deep voice. Oh guy, have you been seeing through? A playful voice sounded from under the cloak of that figure. As expected of the former captain of the 12th Division, Uehara Kisuke, he arranged all the events very tightly, leaving you with insufficient time to think carefully. Otherwise, you might really cause great obstacles to your plan. Are you underestimated? Uehara Kisuke slowly pulled out his zanpakutō from his cane, staring at the figure in front of him with his eyes hidden in the shadow of his hat, and said, Do you think that I can't cause any obstacles when I stand in front of you? P.S. My wrist needs to be healed for 2 or 3 days, and then I will resume the normal 3 updates, and I will update more to compensate, sorry. Chapter 545 Pure Evil. Instantly, from the seemingly unremarkable figure of Uehara Kisuke, a different sense of oppression emanated. Wake up, Benaim. The next moment, Uehara Kisuke and the mysterious figure spoke at the same time, and 2 identical zanpakutō burst into blood haze and slashed at each other. Boom. The collision between the same moves and almost the same power also instantly caused a huge impact, blowing away the hood that covered the face of the mysterious figure, revealing the sinister face and dark green hair. Uehara Kisuke's eyes slightly condensed, and he slowly spoke. Tsunayoshiro Tokinada. Tsunayoshiro Tokinada's snake-like smile appeared, and he answered sinisterly and playfully. It's an honor for Captain Uehara to remember my appearance. In the past, my senior who was a contemporary of Captain Kuku and Captain Yukita killed his wife with his own hands. Although the Tsunayoshiro family deliberately blocked the news, such a cruel and ruthless thing, once you hear Orishisai, you will never forget it, Uehara Kisuke said with a serious look. According to rumors, you have been under house arrest in the Tsunayoshiro family since then and are not allowed to go out. When the noble street was destroyed, the Tsunayoshiro family was almost destroyed, but you, who was so vicious and cruel, became a survivor. Survivor? Tsunayoshiro Tokinada tilted his head slightly and said slowly. In a sense, maybe I'm the reason why the noble street was destroyed. That guy Tosen-Kaname must have dreamed of killing me, right? After all, I personally took his childhood sweetheart, Utohara, as my wife, and then I found that nagging pariah annoying so I killed her directly, Tsunayoshiro Tokinada said with an extremely uncomfortable and chilling expression, as if he was tasting some delicacy like a poisonous snake. Come to think of it, even though hundreds of years have passed, Tosen-Kaname is still in pain. Ho, he broke into the courtyard of the Tsunayoshiro family like a madman and started killing people, shouting my name like a madman. What a pity, he is a blind man. I was following him all the time, but I just used a little prop to hide my spiritual pressure. He couldn't find my existence from beginning to end, and could only wail and shout my name and the name of my wife Utako in pain. Obviously, he should have begged Aizen Sasuke for a long time before launching such a devastating raid on the noble street, but in the end, that pathetic blind man couldn't even find my trace. Although Tsunayoshiro Tokinada's words seemed to express sympathy and sadness, his tone and expression were full of joy and mockery. Even with Uehara Kisuke's strong mentality, the pure evil thoughts emanating from Tsunayoshiro Tokinada still made him feel strongly uncomfortable. Uehara Kisuke turned the red princess in his hand and spoke in a serious tone. You are such a disgusting guy. Although I don't know what your specific goal is, under this circumstance, I cannot let you take away Jinchokiko's body. Compared with Aizen Sasuke, who seemed like a mirage, seemed to despise everything and purely pursue something. At this moment, in Uehara Kisuke's eyes, Tsunayoshiro Tokinada's danger level is undoubtedly higher. Especially in the case of the near annihilation of the Tsunoshiro family, it means that Tsunoshiro Tokinada has perfectly accepted a lot of the background and secrets of the Tsunoshiro family as one of the 4 great nobles. No, Urahara Kisuke, you should know what I want to do. Tsunoshiro Tokinada showed a playful smile on his face and said something that made Urahara Kisuke's face change drastically. Didn't you also secretly create 2 substitutes according to the request of Hyoshuba Wichibaya? In an instant, Urahara Kisuke's face almost completely sank, and his eyes rarely revealed a strong murderous intent. On the other side, standing at the edge, in a Urahara nirvana, their eyes revealed a little confusion, gradually not understanding what Tsunoshiro Tokinada meant by the substitute. Synopsis, who looked expressionless, had a slightly profound look in his eyes. Facing Urahara Kisuke's almost hard to conceal murderous intent, Tsunoshiro Tokinada continued to speak sinisterly. It's really scary, Urahara Kisuke. But it's a pity that you can't stop me, and I have gathered all the conditions. The world will soon operate according to my thoughts. Almost as soon as Tsunoshiro Tokinada finished speaking, a gate appeared accurately behind Tsunoshiro Tokinada, and Tsunoshiro Tokinada, carrying Jinchokiko's body, retreated step by step into the gate. But, you are careless, Tsunoshiro Tokinada. As Urahara Kisuke finished speaking, an after-image that was difficult to see appeared behind Tsunoshiro Tokinada. Shiuin Yorishi. Tsunoshiro Tokinada's pupil shrank slightly, and the red princess in his hand instantly formed a blood cloud shield to block Shifuin Yorishi. How stupid. You use Urahara Kisuke's moods to deal with me. Who are you looking down on? Almost as soon as Shifuin Yorishi's voice entered Tsunoshiro Tokinada's mind, the blood cloud shield shattered, and a heavy kick landed on Tsunoshiro Tokinada's back, directly knocking Tsunoshiro Tokinada away from the position of the gate. Bang! Tsunoshiro Tokinada hit the edge of the underground space heavily, and a large amount of smoke filled the air, making Urahara Kisuke breathe a sigh of relief. As long as Tsunoshiro Tokinada was prevented from returning to Soul Society and confined here, even if Tsunoshiro Tokinada had any particularly bad plans, he would not have the opportunity to implement them. Then, Urahara Kisuke spoke with a rare tone of dissatisfaction. You're almost late, Yorishi. Yorishi Shimen looked around the surroundings, slowly put down her raised foot, and answered without moving her eyes. I changed my clothes, which wasted a little time. This made Urahara Kisuke slightly stunned. In Urahara Kisuke's impression, Yorishi Shimen, who has a nudist fetish, has never cared much about clothes. At such a critical moment, she actually deliberately changed her clothes. Changed her personality. Urahara Kisuke felt puzzled, and turned his attention back to the direction of Tsunoshiro Tokinada, and said casually. What a pity, Tsunoshiro Tokinada, it seems that your plan will encounter a small accident and end here. Ahem, Tsunoshiro Tokinada coughed lightly a few times, then walked out of the smoke and said. The head of Shimen, after all, is one of the 4 great nobles, and he is too cruel. Chapter 546. Yanlamira. First of all, he is the former head of Shiuin, and secondly, what have you, a bastard, done to my place? When she said the last part, Shiuin Yorishi's tone was full of resentment and dissatisfaction, as if she had suffered a lot of damage. After all, in Shiuin Yorishi's eyes, the flower shop was already her cat's nest. When the Gotti 13 attacked, they did not cause much damage to the flower shop itself. However, during the battle between Tsunoshiro Tokinada and Chidori Yasutara, the entire flower shop above was undoubtedly blown away, and the exclusive cat bed and cat bowl prepared by Senju Cheng for Shiuin Yorishi flew away. However, when Urahara Kisuke and Tsunoshiro Tokinada heard these words, a series of thoughts emerged. The former head of the Shiuin family, one of the 4 great nobles, is he serious about this statement? Tsunoshiro Tokinada was slightly stunned, and then spoke. As expected of Yorishi Shiuin, her personality is indeed hard to guess and full of bad taste. I thought I was kidding you. You will pay the price for your actions. Almost at the moment when the voice fell, Yorishi Shiuin instantly appeared behind Tsunoshiro Tokinada. Instant bang. In the surprised eyes of Urahara Kisuke, Yorishi Shiuin directly used the fighting method that he was best at. White lightning burst out crazily, and a punch seemed to smash everything. Tsunoshiro Tokinada's figure was almost instantly submerged in this blow. Seeing this scene, Urahara Kisuke's back teeth subconsciously hurt, and some scenes that he didn't want to recall surged in his mind. Boom. A huge roar suddenly echoed wildly in the underground space. Tsunoyashiro Tokinada's chest was directly blasted with a big hole, and the whole person's spiritual pressure seemed to disappear completely. However, Yorishi Shioen's face was not very good. No, there is a difference in the feel. This guy, however, before Shifu Yuan Yorishi could finish, she was suddenly slashed on the back, and a line of blood spurted out. Fortunately, Shifu Yuan Yorishi's body instinctively dodged forward, otherwise the knife might have directly ripped Shifu Yuan Yorishi's belly open. A name was squeezed out from Shifu Yuan Yorishi's teeth. This ability is Mirror Flower and Water Moon. As soon as these words came out, Uehara Kisuke's face changed drastically, and he spoke subconsciously. Could it be that Tsunoyashiro Tokinada really joined forces with Aizen Sasuke? No, Shifu Yuan Yorishi quickly retreated to the side of Uehara Kisuke. His eyes kept looking around, and it seemed that there was no other abnormal environment except Tsunoyashiro Tokinada's body, and he spoke in a solemn tone. I remembered some records about the Tsunoyashiro family in the family secrets. According to rumors, the Tsunoyashiro family, like the Is family, has preserved a zanpakutō from generation to generation, but it is actually a special artifact. And the artifact passed down from generation to generation in the Tsunoyashiro family is called, before Shifu Yuan Yorishi could finish, Tsunoyashiro Tokinada added directly. That's right, its name is Yanrakagami no Ori, and its ability is to imitate any zanpakutō that I have seen or known. Therefore, whether it is Benign or Aizen Sasuke's Kagami Suigetsu, I can easily use the corresponding zanpakutō ability. After a pause, Tsunoyashiro Tokinada showed a big smile on his face and said, also, I'm probably the first person in the entire Seireitei to know the true power of Aizen Sasuke's zanpakutō, right? After I saw that zanpakutō with my own eyes and tried to imitate it, I knew that Aizen Sasuke had hidden his true zanpakutō power. However, I didn't tell anyone. Everything was just as I expected. Aizen Sasuke really did something incredible. These words full of ridicule and malice made Uehara Kisuke and Shifu Yorishi look depressed. This special artifact, which is undoubtedly a zanpakutō shell, is not so much a zanpakutō as a zanpakutō shell. It's too troublesome. In particular, Tsunoyashiro Tokinada is hiding behind the scenes, and it is completely unknown how much of the zanpakutō's power he can imitate. However, one thing is certain, that is, Captain General Yamamoto's Raijin Jaku will definitely not be an exception. By the way, Tsunoyashiro Tokinada seemed to have thought of something and continued. In addition to Aizen Sasuke, there is also that vice captain of the 4th Division named Senju Cheng who has been hiding his true zanpakutō ability. What's surprising is that his zanpakutō Bankai can't be directly imitated. Unfortunately, when I discovered this secret and wanted to investigate further, that guy died in the Hukou Mundo, which made me wonder if he has been hiding behind the scenes. While saying these words, Tsunoyashiro Tokinada's slightly narrowed eyes were always paying attention to the reactions of Shifu Yorishi and Uehara Kisuke. What made Tsunoyashiro Tokinada a little regretful was that the micro-expressions of Uehara Kisuke and Shifu Yorishi clearly expressed shock and surprise, as if they had no understanding at all. However, I deliberately imitated his real zanpakutō ability to attack Wanyan and Jikita Jushiro. If he was hiding behind the scenes, he should be able to be lured out. It seems that he is really dead. What a pity, he should be an interesting guy, a guy similar to Aizen Sasuke. Tsunoyashiro Tokinada spoke to himself at the end with a hint of regret in his tone, and then said to Uehara Kisuke and Shifu Yorishi in front of him. The time for chatting is over. According to the time, Kusanagi Sojiro should be almost over. Goodbye, both of you. In an instant, Shifu Yorishi and Uehara Kisuke almost simultaneously attacked the true position of Tsunoyashiro Tokinada that they judged. However, at the moment when Shifu Yorishi and Uehara Kisuke attacked, countless densely packed Tsunoyashiro Tokinadas that were difficult to distinguish between the real and fake appeared in the entire underground space, and they all had the kind of playful malicious smile on their faces. It was as if it was mocking Shifu Yorishi and Uehara Kisuke for not being able to deal with the power of Mirror Flower Water Moon. In fact, Uehara Kisuke really had no way to deal with the power of Mirror Flower Water Moon, otherwise he would not have wandered in the human world for 100 years without being able to think of a perfect way to deal with Aizen Sasuke. At a place where Uehara Kisuke, Shifu Yorishi, Synopsis and others completely turned a blind eye, a new gate was slowly opened, and Tsunoyashiro Tokinada, dragging Jinchokiko's body, walked in slowly. The real show is about to begin. Chapter 547 Successor The Seireitei. The black curtain formed by the expansion of the spiritual pressure of the King's Seal has become more and more conspicuous, and even many residents in Rukonge can see it from a distance. Although Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni is the main force, Komamura Sejin's Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mu and Kurosachi Jitsu's Golden Hijisho Jitsu are the auxiliary forces, constantly preventing the expansion of the Black Curtain. Boom. The Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mu and Golden Hijisho Jitsu, the huge monsters formed after the materialization of the two zanpakutō Bankai, are constantly pushed by the Black Curtain and retrieved on the surging mud on the ground. The raging flames ignited by the Raijinjaka almost seem to completely ignite the sky on one side of the Seireitei. However, so far, the extent of the expansion of the spiritual pressure of the King's Seal has covered about 1/3 of the entire Seireitei. Captain-in-Chief, in the sky, behind Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni, who was naked like a fire god, Chojuro Suzuki half knelt down and reported the latest situation in a hurried tone. The situation made Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni frown slightly. At present, the entire Gotti 13 Division has almost summoned all its combat power to the battlefield, perhaps to help stop the expansion of the Black Curtain to buy time, or to wend to the Black Curtain to help open the passage to the floating ice city. However, under the power of the King's Seal, the Black Curtain seemed to be completely connected to the Great Hollow Forest of Ukomundo, and a steady stream of Jillian, large hollows, and ordinary hollows appeared in front of the Gotti 13 Division. On the contrary, the current Gotti 13 Division captain position has 3 vacancies due to the rebellion of Aizen Sasuke and others, and his 2 disciples are seriously injured, which is equivalent to losing nearly half of the captain-level combat power for nothing. Although many vice-captains or chief officers showed their Bankai abilities at such a critical moment, the situation still did not ease. Therefore, the captains headed by Captain Kuchiki were entangled by the Aransei. Now, except for Captain Soifong, only Kurosaki Makoto, Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai have arrived at the floating ice castle. Suzuchojiro finally reported the most critical information, which made Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni's face darken. In any case, it was obviously a crisis for the Seireitei, but in the end it had to rely on Kurosaki Makoto, who was a quincy, and Kurosaki Ichigo, who was a substitute Shinigami, to solve it. This was undoubtedly a misstep by the Gotti 13. Moreover, the assistance of Kurosaki Makoto and others also showed that the Gotti 13's hostile attitude towards them was a wrong decision. Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni's face seemed to change slightly under the flames of Raijinjaka, and then he spoke. Chojiro, you also join the battlefield, and quickly get Captain Kuchiki and the others out of the entanglement of the Aranseis, and then, fully assist Mr. Kurosaki Makoto in dealing with Kusanagi Sojiro. Chojiro Suzuki hesitated for a moment and said, "But, Captain General, if I am not by your side to protect you, there may be thieves who take the opportunity to attack you. Since there are a large number of Aranseis under Kusanagi Sojiro's command, in the eyes of the 13th Court Gotti, they have to doubt whether Kusanagi Sojiro has any deep relationship with Aizen Sasuke. When Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni is doing his best to resist the expansion of the King's Seal, it is undoubtedly the time when the defensor is most likely to be the weakest. As the Captain General Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni who founded the 13th Court Gotti, if there is any accident, it will be a fatal blow to the entire 13th Court Gotti. Therefore, no matter how urgent the situation was before, Chojiro Suzuki, as the last line of defense, never left Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni. At this moment, a gentle and elegant voice reached the ears of Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni and Suzuki Chojiro. "I will temporarily ensure the safety of Captain General Yamamoto, how about that?" The next moment, Unohana Retsu, who looked harmless, with his hands hidden in his sleeves, appeared behind Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni, holding a zanpakutō with an exaggerated blade arc in his arms. Suzuki Chojiro, who was half kneeling in the air, saw this, slightly turned sideways, and respectfully saluted Unohana Retsu. "Captain Unohana." Unohana Retsu responded with a kind nod, and then said, "Vice Captain Suzuki, I'll trouble you to support the other captains from now on. I'll protect Captain General Yamamoto's back. You shouldn't be worried, right?" As a vice-captain who has followed Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni for more than 1,000 years, Suzuki Chojiro undoubtedly knows what kind of existence Unohana Retsu is, and almost answered immediately, "I dare not." Then, Chojiro Suzuki looked up at Shibukuni Yamamoto in a subtle way. After confirming that Shibukuni Yamamoto had no other instructions, he bowed slightly to Shibukuni Yamamoto and Retsu Unohana again, and then his figure quickly disappeared from the spot. As Chojiro Suzuki left, Retsu Unohana stood quietly behind Shibukuni Yamamoto, squinting his eyes gently at Shibukuni Yamamoto who was maintaining the raging flames. Suddenly, Retsu Unohana spoke with some emotion. Captain General, the last time we did this was 1,000 years ago, right? Shichikuni Yamamoto, who was facing away, glanced back and did not speak. After a moment, Retsu Unohana changed his tone and said, "You're old." "Captain Unohana, what do you want to express?" Shichikuni Yamamoto asked in a voice that seemed to be unable to distinguish between joy and anger. "It's just what it says." Unohana Retsu spoke gently and calmly, as if he was chatting with a good friend. "Captain General, your old body can no longer bear the heavy and huge power. You are full of worries and no longer have the decisiveness to swing the sword." After a pause, Unohana Retsu continued. "Maybe you need to consider a successor." "Successor?" These words, like a reminder from an old friend, undoubtedly made Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni more silent, and also made Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni subconsciously think of several figures. First was Kakushansui, and then the rising star Hitsuge Yatshiru in recent decades. However, Kakushansui has more qualifications, experience, and scheming, but lacks temperament and pattern. His strength and talent are also not enough to truly consolidate the position of Captain General. As for Hitsuge Yatshiru, he is exactly the opposite of Kakushansui. Perhaps he is too immature in every aspect, but he possesses the strongest zanpakutō of the Ice and Snow system, Horinmara, and undoubtedly has the potential to be the Captain General. However, Hitsuge Yatshiru is still too immature. In the eyes of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, he is no less immature than a man who can easily squeeze water out of him. Inexplicably, another figure that should have been buried deep in his memory emerged in Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's mind. Chapter 548 The so-called, the strongest. Makoto Senju. He also holds a zanpakutō that is known as the strongest, but he does not have the naivety of Churu Hitsugaya, and his style of doing things is gentle and humble. Although he is only a vice-captain, his strong personal charm makes him quite famous in all the squads. Moreover, during the period when Makoto Senju served as vice-captain, he made the 4th squad, which was originally at the lowest end of the list, directly reversed to become the most popular and well-funded squad in the entire Seireitei, which is enough to show Makoto Senju's skill and ability in handling team affairs. Although Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni did not have many direct contacts with Makoto Senju, every time he had contact with him, he undoubtedly left a deep impression on him. In the past, he was a more perfect example of a Shinigami than Aizen Sasuke. Thinking of this, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni sighed inexplicably, and then his expression returned to his usual solemnity and spoke. "I'm not as old as you said. The successor should not be chosen by me, but should defeat me personally and take the title of strongest death god from me before he can sit on the position of Captain General." Unohana Retsu heard this and did not speak again, as if what he just said was just a casual reminder between old friends. "But, Captain General, is this your attitude?" Unohana Retsu stared at the back of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. While Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni and Unohana Retsu were talking, the battle in the dark undoubtedly began to intensify further. Not only the captains were fighting with the Seireitei, but also on the ice layer on top of the floating ice city. The instant Seireitei was facing the giant ice dragon transformed by Kusanagi Sojiro, and was almost instantly at a disadvantage. Kusanagi Sojiro's weakness was undoubtedly the king's seal on the forehead of the ice dragon. However, no matter how fast Seireitei was, she had no chance to reach the king's seal as Kusanagi Sojiro was well prepared. 1,000-year ice prison. Kusanagi Sojiro stepped heavily on the ice with his dragon claws, and suddenly, with Seireitei as the center, towering ice pillars emerged one after another, constantly rotating and surrounding Seireitei. Seireitei's figure flashed, and she used various advanced instant steps to break through in different directions. However, at this moment, under the support of the power of the King's Seal, Kusanagi Sojiro, who did not master Bankai, could exert the power of his zanpakutō far beyond the limit of Hitsuge Yatshiru. The ice pillars suddenly gathered together, not giving Seireitei any chance to escape, and completely froze her inside. The ice dragon's tail spun into the air. Then, Kusanagi Sojiro, who had transformed into an ice dragon, suddenly turned around, and the dragon's tail behind him, which was emitting a strong cold air, left traces of extreme cold in the air, and slammed down towards the frozen Seireitei. However, Kusanagi Sojiro felt that his dragon's tail seemed to be caught by something, and suddenly stopped above the 1,000-year ice prison. As Kusanagi Sojiro turned his head, a flash of shock flashed in his purple-blue eyes reflecting the figure of Senju Makoto. It was seen that as a queen sea whose body should be fragile, Senju Cheng stood on the top of the 1,000-year ice prison and blocked the dragon's tail that was powerful enough to smash a mountain with a swing of his arms. How is it possible? I have clearly fully materialized the power of Horinmara through the king's seal. This is the zanpakutō known as the strongest. To this extent, in the extremely cold temperature, strands of ice began to condense rapidly on the surface of Senju Cheng's skin, but Senju Cheng's expression remained normal as he spoke. You can't call it the strongest. With a sudden low shout, Senju Cheng, who was holding the dragon's tail, suddenly tightened his arms and pulled the dragon's tail. In the eyes of Kusanagi, who was horrified, his body seemed to be pulled by a huge force that he could not resist, and he completely lost control and was pulled by Senju Cheng. The next moment, Senju Cheng raised his arms and pressed them down, but he directly swung the entire huge ice dragon up and then smashed it heavily into the ice layer on the other side. Boom! This collision was no less powerful than a meteorite falling. Kusanagi huge body smashed into the ice layer, creating a huge tent on the top of the floating ice city. Large spiderweb-like cracks spread wildly in all directions. As for the ice dragon, it seemed to be smashed to pieces, and for a moment it seemed to have lost its ability to move. Senju Cheng took the opportunity to raise his foot and step on the Millennium Ice Prison. Crack! The Millennium Ice Prison that was enough to freeze the captain level shattered with a sound, revealing Seireitei who was briefly controlled in it. Then, Senju Cheng landed beside Seireitei, who seemed to be distracted for a moment, and reminded her. Captain Seireitei, your ability is not suitable for dealing with such a huge monster. Even if you use the two-hit kill ability on Kusanagi ice dragon body, it is not Kusanagi real body. Seireitei, who is naturally strong-willed and has a strong sense of self-esteem, has been saved again and again by a mere queency. She is extremely unwilling to accept it. Then, Seireitei gritted her teeth and slowly stretched the sparrow bee that turned into a fingertip in front of her eyes, and a few words came out from between her teeth. Bankai sparrow bee, however, before Seireitei, whose spiritual pressure began to surge rapidly, could finish her words, a finger was stretched in front of her mouth, making a hushing gesture. Seireitei. This behavior seemed to be full of intimacy and pampering, and instantly Seireitei's eyes were filled with shame and anger, and the look in her eyes when she looked at Senju Cheng even revealed naked killing intent. Senju Cheng also realized that his subconscious action was somewhat inappropriate for the identity of Kurosaki Cheng. Ahem, Senju Cheng coughed lightly and then spoke. The king's seal is fused with Kusanagi, and Urahara Kisyu told me that the condition for the complete release of the king's seal is to destroy it through the zanpakutō of Bankai. Once Captain Seireitei uses the Bankai ability that can destroy everything regardless of enemy or friend, the probability of the king's seal being accidentally destroyed is extremely high, and then Captain Seireitei will fall into an irreversible state of king's seal release. After a pause, Senju Cheng added in an unusually calm tone. Even if you want to sacrifice yourself to protect the Seireitei, it's not yet so critical. Seireitei's face turned pale and blue, and she also realized that what Senju Cheng said is probably the foreseeable future. For the god of death, the release of the king's seal is irreversible. By then, even if Bankai Sparrowfly Thunderwhip prevented the king's seal controlled by Kusanagi from going berserk, he would have to accidentally release the king's seal. Death is the final result. Although Seireitei was grateful for Senju Cheng's reminder, she spoke in a somewhat cold tone. None of your business is to take care of this kind of thing. I actually have some things related to Senju Cheng in my hand. Before Senju Cheng could finish her words trying to remind Seireitei to cherish life, Seireitei suddenly grabbed Senju Cheng's wrist at an incredible speed, her eyes gleaming, and she shouted in a hurried tone. Hand it over. Chapter 549 Evolution. Makoto Senju. Seireitei's sudden reaction almost made Makoto Senju unable to react. Hand it over. Seireitei reiterated. I haven't even said what it is yet. Makoto Senju said helplessly. As long as it's Makoto-kun's, I want it. Seireitei said without hesitation. Makoto Senju. However, the reason why Makoto Senju suddenly proposed this was that he noticed that Seireitei's reaction seemed a little wrong, so he used this method to let Seireitei not use Bankai easily. However, the behavior between Makoto Senju and Seireitei that seemed to completely ignore him undoubtedly angered Kusanagi, who was quickly repairing the body of the ice dragon through the power of the king's seal. After a few breaths, Kusanagi Sojiro, who had completely recovered, suddenly flapped his wings, and his huge body completely enveloped Makoto Senju and Soifong in the shadow, and the extreme cold current whistled in. "Leave him to me." Seeing this, Senju Makoto said in a tone that could not be refused, and took the initiative to go to Kusanagi Sojiro. A large number of spirit particles were absorbed crazily at a visible level, gathering, Quincy. The ice dragon that Kusanagi Sojiro transformed into seemed to feel Senju Makoto's calm eyes, and suddenly roared. "Let me show you the power of the strongest zanpakutō Horinmara that has been fully tapped by the king's seal, and turned into an ice sculpture in the eternal cold." After being grabbed by the dragon's tail and thrown from behind by Senju Makoto, Kusanagi Sojiro had obviously given up the idea of fighting Senju Makoto in close combat with his transformed ice dragon body. Horinmara is the strongest zanpakutō of the ice and snow system. The next moment, the light of the king's seal seemed to be shining, making the ice dragon incarnated by Kusanagi Sojiro even more ferocious and huge, with countless ice and snow condensing in its wide mouth. Bang! The materialized extreme cold breath gushed out, and wherever it passed, the surroundings seemed to be instantly frozen. Seeing this scene, Soifong's heart couldn't help but tighten. Although the power of Horinmara in the hands of Hitsuge Ichiro in the past was average, after all, Horinmara was recognized by the Central 46 Chambers as the strongest zanpakutō of the ice and snow system, and was the strongest zanpakutō of the same level as Raijinjaka. The fact that Hitsuge Ichiro was still young and could not do it did not mean that the power of Horinmara itself was only that level. At this moment, the whistling extreme cold breath, even though Soifong was still quite far away, she felt that her body was affected and seemed to be frozen, and even the spiritual power in her body began to stagnate. Even within the space shrouded in darkness, the sky was instantly changed. Pieces of ice flowers continued to fall within the entire huge area. Senju Makoto's seemingly tiny figure compared to the ice dragon seemed to be completely submerged in it in an instant. "Idiot, get out of the way!" Soifong almost subconsciously shouted from a distance. "Get out of the way!" The light of countless spirit particles gathered, making Senju Makoto's entire body seem to be enveloped by the blue spirit particle light. Senju Makoto did not respond to Soifong, and his figure did not retreat. Although Shifen Yuan Yorishi had already returned to the world, the bad premonition made Senju Makoto no longer want to delay. "It's almost time to make enough trouble," Senju Makoto said lightly, and that point of brilliance instantly burst out and extended, piercing through the extreme cold. It was like a giant spirit particle sword that was magnified countless times. Wherever the touch of azure blue passed, it seemed to shatter the extreme cold, and in an instant it crossed with the ice dragon incarnated by Kusanagi Sojiro. The ice dragon's violet eyes flashed with disbelief, staring at Senju Makoto not far away, and slowly spoke with difficulty. How is it possible? The power of the zanpakutō, which has been magnified and expanded by the king, is just a facade. Senju Makoto slowly loosened his hands holding the giant sword of spirit particles, allowing the giant sword of spirit particles to quickly dissipate into a large amount of spirit particles in the air, and when it intersects with a large amount of ice flowers, it forms a dreamlike beauty. However, the purple-blue eyes flashed with trance and confusion. This strongest zanpakutō is just a facade. How is it possible? At this moment, the huge ice dragon's upper and lower body slowly separated and slid down where the giant sword of spirit particles passed, revealing an extremely smooth hard surface. Indeed, it is just a facade, at least in the eyes of Senju Makoto, who can see the microscopic world of spirit particles. This ice dragon body, which is completely formed by the king's seal and the expansion of the power of Horinmara, is like a large number of roughly piled up spirit particles. There is no beauty, and it is full of flaws, just cut through the most obvious gap. Then, Senju Makoto moved and appeared on the forehead of the ice dragon that was fused with the king's seal, just as he was about to take the king's seal off. Inside the forehead of the ice dragon, Kusanagi Sojiro's body suddenly reached out and grasped the king's seal, with a strange look as if he was immersed in some kind of emotion, and his mouth was muttering something frantically. Some kind of hypnotic suggestion that had been covered up before began to spread wildly in Kusanagi Sojiro's heart. The power of zanpakutō, only when it evolves to a certain level can it be qualified to discuss cooperation. So that's how it is. In Senju Makoto's slightly surprised eyes, a mask of hollow gradually appeared on Kusanagi Sojiro's face. Hollow. Almost instantly, not only on his face, but also on Kusanagi Sojiro's entire body, white substances of hollow burst out, covering Kusanagi Sojiro's entire body. Kusanagi Sojiro's special spiritual pressure, which was a mixture of Shinigami and Hollow, also seemed to be intensified and expanded rapidly. Then, Senju Cheng realized that Kusanagi Sojiro seemed to be under the influence of the power of the King's Seal, and began to further break the limits of Shinigami and Hollow on his own. Bang! Senju Cheng put his 5 fingers together to form a hand knife, and cut directly towards Kusanagi Sojiro's wrist, holding the King's Seal inside the Ice Dragon's forehead, trying to take the King's Seal first. However, bang! The Ice Dragon's forehead was completely shattered, and Kusanagi Sojiro, with most of his body exposed to the air again, raised his hand to block Senju Cheng's hand knife. Crack! The huge impact instantly twisted and broke Kusanagi Sojiro's hand bones. However, Kusanagi Sojiro seemed to be in a special boundary between the Shinigami and the Hollow. In just a moment, Kusanagi Sojiro's arm recovered as normal. In this extremely short time, he pressed the King's Seal towards his chest. Chapter 550 The importance of the King's Seal. King's Seal is still going wild. As Sojiro Kusanagi's chest came into contact with the King's Seal, it seemed to begin to twist and collapse, and actually formed a structure similar to a hollow hole. However, the King's Seal stayed in the structure similar to the hollow hole, and combined with Sojiro Kusanagi in this weird way. At this moment, in the eyes of Makoto Senju, Sojiro Kusanagi's state is a bit like the Kito Ichigo form, in which the power of the hollow in Kuroseki Ichigo's body completely went wild, and a bit like the special form of Asian Sasuke after he began to fuse and evolve with the Hokage. This guy, Makoto Senju's face sank slightly, and a spirit sword similar to the zanpakutō formed in his hand, and he slashed straight at Sojiro Kusanagi. However, at this moment, Sojiro Kusanagi's eyes seemed to have little reason left, and his hand also condensed into an ice knife at the same time. Boom! The horrible spiritual pressure mixed with the god of death and the hollow collided with Kusanagi Sojiro's body, and the real airwave raged wildly in all directions. The next moment, in the slightly focused eyes of Senju Cheng, the ice knife was chopped into pieces, and the spirit knife passed through Kusanagi Sojiro's chest. Kusanagi Sojiro was cut in half. However, almost at the moment of being cut in half, a large amount of white substance of the hollow appeared inside the wound, and between the interconnections, Kusanagi Sojiro instantly recovered. On the contrary, Kusanagi Sojiro took this opportunity to quickly recover the chopped ice knife and chopped it towards Senju Cheng's neck. Senju Cheng loosened the tightly grasped spirit knife and retreated, but suddenly stretched out his hand to pull. The spirit knife left in Kusanagi Sojiro's body instantly disintegrated into spirit lines, entangled and bound Kusanagi Sojiro layer by layer. Well done, Kuroseki Makoto. The next moment, Seireitei appeared behind Kusanagi Sojiro. While praising him, she tapped Seireitei's back twice with the sparrow bee ring on her middle finger. At the moment when a bee pattern flower almost began to bloom, another bee pattern flower emerged. 2 hits to kill. The 2 bee pattern flowers overlapped instantly, triggering the terrifying effect. However, at this moment, under the light emitted by the King's Seal, the black bee pattern flower suddenly began to fade. In addition, the terrifying spiritual pressure that erupted from Kusanagi Sojiro broke the spiritual string, and then he slashed at Seireitei with a backhand, forcing Seireitei to retrieve quickly. Then he turned around and stopped beside Senju Cheng with a serious face, saying, "Things seem to be a bit troublesome. The 2 hits to kill don't work. The spiritual pressure gap is too big, and the power of the King's Seal is interfering." Senju Cheng responded. "What should we do? This guy seems to be evolving with the power of the Royal Seal," Seireitei said with a frown. Makoto Senju's eyes reflected the still changing Kusanagi Sojiro, and after a moment of contemplation, he said, "You're right, but if you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. Kusanagi Sojiro can't bear the weight of the Royal Seal, and he is just courting his own death. In a sense, the only one who can perfectly bear the weight of the Royal Seal is the Soul King." Kusanagi Sojiro's idea of trying to evolve himself with the power of the Royal Seal is not wrong, but unless Kusanagi Sojiro can evolve to the level of the Soul King, the result will only be one. At this time, Hitsuge Itsuru, Kachiki Byakuya, Hisagishu and other Shinigami who had dealt with their respective opponents rushed to the top floor of the floating ice city. Kusanagi Sojiro's special state, which seemed like a Shinigami and a hollow, also stunned the Shinigami who had just arrived. "Sojiro!" Hitsuge Itsuru tried to shout, but there was no response. On the contrary, Kusanagi Sojiro's body changed again, and the huge spiritual pressure even made the captains who had just arrived feel that it was difficult to breathe. However, Kusanagi Sojiro seemed to be unable to control his own evolution. He raised his head and roared. The next moment, in the astonished eyes of everyone, Kusanagi Sojiro's chest began to collapse and shrink further. No. Kusanagi Sojiro finally made a distorted and vague sound. However, Kusanagi Sojiro only had time to slightly raise his limbs that could hardly be called arms in the direction of Hitsuge Yaeshiro, and his whole body instantly collapsed and shrank completely with the king's seal as the center. Everyone only felt that their eyes were blurred, and Kusanagi Sojiro disappeared completely as if he was completely crushed by the king's seal, leaving only the king's seal suspended in the air. Is this the end? Looking at the king's seal that seemed to have not changed at all, the Shinigami present couldn't help but feel dazed. Hitsuge Yaeshiro was even more disappointed, muttering the name Kusaka no Sojiro. With the disappearance of Kusaka no Sojiro, the black curtain opened by the rampage of the king's seal quickly began to dissipate, and the various hollows that kept swarming out no longer appeared. It's over. Kachika Byakuya said. In fact, as the head of the Kachika family with a long heritage, Kachika Byakuya knew very well what the consequences would be if a Shinigami touched the power of the king's seal. However, Kusaka no Sojiro's radical use of the king's seal to promote his own evolution and try to completely match the weight of the king's seal undoubtedly brought the inevitable consequences much earlier and seemed much more shocking. Then, without the support of the power of the king's seal, the floating ice city began to disintegrate rapidly and fell towards the ground of the Seireitei. Boom. The huge noise caused by the collision between the floating ice city and the Seireitei almost shook the entire Seireitei. This also made the Palace of Confession, which was once the iconic building complex of the Seireitei, completely turn into ruins before it could be completely repaired and restored after the battle between Senju Makoto and Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. Then, Hitsuge Yaeshiro, who had recovered from his loss of consciousness, slowly stepped forward and continued to carry out the responsibility and mission of guarding the king's seal of the 10th Division. However, just after a big battle, everyone was in a very relaxed state, and Hitsuge Yaeshiro was about to touch the king's seal. Swoosh! A cold light suddenly appeared from the side of Hitsuge Yaeshiro, and directly cut off one of Hitsuge Yaeshiro's arms. The splattering blood and the sudden change made the death gods present instantly startled. The next moment, before the others could fully react, a hand stretched out from the gate opened beside Hitsuge Yaeshiro who grasped the king's seal. P.S. The third update will be available soon. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.